Fly ball pretty well hit toward right. Matos on the track. Hit the wall. Here it's gone. A 3-run bomb for Burleson. Wings got a good lead. Not going. Fly ball hammered towards center. Ramos going back. Turns. That ball is onto the berm. A 2-homer game for Burleson.
He's been getting on base. He's aggressive. He's playing, just really good baseball. He's using the whole field. And Burley, he's stepping into that role extremely well. This is a guy that just takes a competitive at-bat. If you're on the opposing side and you have to start with those are two really gritty at-bats to start the game, and then you got some thump after that. So I like where we're at.
That voice you just heard was Ollie Marmol, audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. The Cardinals complete the sweep over the weekend against a really solid National League opponent in the San Francisco Giants. Alex, this is what we've been asking for, man. The teams that are in your range in this National League, where everybody's within a couple of games of one another in the National League wildcard standings, you got to take advantage of the games that you have against them because they basically count double. You're pushing them down in the standings and propping yourself up. There's a lot of those games coming up for the Cardinals. You've got Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Washington, and then to finish out the first half of the season, another 4-game set at home going into the All-Star break against the Chicago Cubs. It continues tonight against Atlanta, but they're doing what they needed to do. Weird series against Miami, unacceptable, can't lose 2 out of 3 there. We all agree on that. Let's set that aside for a moment. What we saw in the last 3 games against San Francisco, a hell of a performance by your offense, especially over the weekend against 2 of the better pitchers so far this season in the National League, Jordan Hicks, Logan Webb. For some, Logan Webb is a top 5 to 7 National League Cy Young candidate so far this year, and you were able to hit him. And it all comes back to that 1-2 punch that has started to develop for the Cardinals. Alex, since becoming the primary 1-2 in the Cardinals lineup, Mason Wynn is batting .295 with an OPS right around 800. Alec Burleson is batting .305 with an OPS of 940, and now he's becoming Willie McGee, Ray Langford, whoever your favorite base stealer is for the Cardinals over the last 50 years. Alec Burleson's out there stealing bases as well. Alex, what are you watching right now? What do you like what you're seeing out of the Cardinals right now at the top of the order?
Look, that was an impressive sweep, and I will give the Cardinals credit because throughout the year, although they have lost to a lot of bad teams, they have gotten the job done against teams that are in the same caliber as them. The Diamondbacks, the Mets, the Pirates, the Reds, they've done that against those quality opponents, so I won't take anything away from them because sweeps are hard to come by, and the Cardinals did that, and you did it against top pitching with Jordan Hicks and Logan Webb. But the part that was most impressive for me over the weekend wasn't the sweep, wasn't the pitching, it was Burleson and Mason Wynn. Mostly Alec Burleson, because much like Mason Wynn, I didn't expect him to be anything this significant to the team at the beginning of the season. I thought he was going to be a complimentary piece. I thought it was going to be all about defense. I thought Alec Burleson was at best going to be a bench bat for you. Maybe a DH at times, a lefty that was occasionally going to come up with a big moment for you. At no moment did I believe that Alec Burleson was going to be the second face of this franchise in this season. And he has done that. I think he has overtaken Nolan Gorman, and I think he's overtaken Jordan Walker as it stands right now. Because when Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson stepped to the plate, and a little of Brendan Donovan, I expect a big moment for the Cardinals. And look at what happened specifically on Saturday. You were trailing multiple times, and Alec Burleson came through with a shot that gave the Cardinals life. Mason Wynn has done that a lot this season. To give the Cardinals life, he comes up with a big hit. So it was impressive how you pitched the Giants. It was impressive that you pulled off 2 victories and you earned that sweep after the Rickwood Fields game. But I was more impressed left after that weekend looking at Alec Burleson and saying, man, you just might have emerged another star that I did not think you had in your system.
Yeah, I feel like this 1-2 punch is the best one they've had in a couple of years. And I know Donovan and Nootbaar were up there, and Goldie was an MVP in 22, but I don't know if you really had the leadoff guy in front of him. Donovan was there, but Donovan and Nootbaar do it in a different way. They do it by their batter's eye, getting on base, by drawing walks. Wynn and Burley put pressure on the defense by putting the ball in play, and they seem to find holes. I mean, you saw it in the game yesterday where Logan Webb gets beat because the defense is shifted. So what's he do? He shifts the defense back to where Burley hit the ball. Where's Burley go? Right up the middle to where the defense is. They just put the ball in play. They're good contact hitters in a day and age in which the strikeout is the most prevalent thing at the plate. So I love what we're seeing from those two guys. Wynn's doing it kind of old school fashion, hitting 300, going to steal some bases for you. And Burley's the guy that just puts the ball in play, and it's a 1-2 combination that is really working for the St. Louis Cardinals, and it feels like they've finally gotten that locked down. They had Donovan struggling early on. Nootbaar was struggling early on, so you weren't getting that kind of production at the top of the order. Now you are with Wynn and Alec Burleson, and it's setting things up for the heart of the order.
So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what Alec Burleson has done against some of the best pitching that you've seen so far this year, all right? Because I think this is something that Alex has talked a lot about of, well, yeah, it's great that he's doing that, or that the Cardinals are doing this, but are they doing it against the best starters that you're seeing? That's who you're going to see in the postseason. You don't get to see the number 5 starters for a team unless the game is already completely out of hand one way or the other. You're going to see their top 3, and you're going to see dudes with strikeout stuff. You're going to see excellent power pitchers. Well, against Aaron Nola, he went 1 for 5. That's the worst performance that he's had against these guys for the most part. Verlander 1 for 3, Skeens 2 for 3, Imanaga 1 for 3, Webb 2 for 3, Wheeler 2 for 2, Hicks 2 for 2, Glasnow 0 for 2 in that game. It's pretty damn impressive, dude. Those are some really good numbers against what is essentially a who's who of the Cy Young contenders for 2024. That's Alec Burleson doing that, man. That is why he needed to be higher up in the order. He has earned this opportunity for the Cardinals. Mason Wynn, I haven't gone through the numbers, but just anecdotally speaking, it feels like it would probably be pretty similar in terms of him getting good hitting against quality pitching. I know that sounds so simplistic, but dude, that's what the Cardinals have been missing for years. They go up against these especially right-handed studs, and it feels like their lineup just wilts. Well, when you've got a good lefty bat that has a good bat-to-ball profile the way that Alec Burleson does, well, those right-handed pitchers, they don't scare you the same way. With Mason Wynn, he talked over the weekend, he said, I feel like I'm a little swing happy right now. I'd like to take some more walks. It's like, dude, you're batting 300, you're a rookie, and you're batting at the top of the order. It's really remarkable to watch, and it's a lot of fun, man. I'm enjoying watching these young guys. I don't have that same feeling watching Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado right now, but the young guys that we're seeing for the Cardinals, they get me excited as a fan. Brendan Donovan hitting the way that he has over the last few weeks. Alec Burleson, Mason Wynn, Gorman when he gets hot, and that'll come. He's going through it again right now. We know how this works, guys. He's going to go through like a 4 for 50, and then he's going to go on a heater where he hits 6 home runs in a 10-game stretch. We'll wait for it. It'll be coming. Eventually, Jordan Walker's going to get back up to the big league level. This is what we were all hoping for, and now we're kind of starting to see it play out on the field, Alex.
Yeah, the one thing that I have held on to for the longest time, and I think it angers some Cardinals fans at times, but it's the fact that you've been unable to hit in a playoff game, whether it's a wild card or the series that you've been a part of, you've been unable to hit. But the one thing about it that I can't hold on to anymore is you haven't had Burleson and Wynn in the lineup when it comes to playoff baseball. You've had Gorman, you've seen Nootbaar, you've seen a little of Brendan Donovan, and you know, of course, Goldschmidt and Arenado. All of these guys I've seen, and unless you can make improvements, I know what to expect. But I haven't seen that with Burleson and Mason Wynn. And already this season, and you just went through some of those at-bats for Alec Burleson, you think of some of the bigger games, Burleson and Wynn have been the reason the Cardinals have come out on top of their pitching. So if you get Jordan Walker back by the end of the season, then that's just gravy. But for right now, I think the one thing that a lot of people can hold on to is that you do have 2 bats that I did not expect this Cardinals team to have. And when Burleson and Wynn are hitting like this is contagious. This can go to everybody else in the lineup. This is how a Michael Ciani comes up with a hit, or a Pedro Pajes comes up with a hit, or when they're healthy or if they're clicking, Goldschmidt and Arenado continue to click. We've seen a turn that I didn't expect because I thought it was going to be Walker and Gorman or Walker and Nootbaar, some type of combination. We've seen a turn that has made Goldschmidt and Arenado become complementary pieces, and Burleson and Wynn being the guys that are leading this team to the finish line.
And it's weird it's been these two because this is kind of how we envisioned the season kind of going, which was, a lot of young guys are going to really contribute. But then if I said the young guys were Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson, you would have laughed at me at the beginning of the year. You would have thought.
We thought Alec Burleson might not make the opening day roster. Do you remember those conversations?
He wouldn't have. If Tommy Edman was healthy, Burleson was not making this roster.
Yeah, because I remember when they signed Carpenter, I was like, so I guess they're bumping Burleson down to the minors.
And Crawford.
Yeah, exactly. So It's unbelievable that we've gotten to this point where we're finally at where we thought we would be, which is the young guys can maybe help Goldschmidt and Arenado. It's not the young guys are helping Goldschmidt and Arenado. The young guys are helping carry Goldschmidt and Arenado, and it's the two young guys we weren't expecting. And now you look at what's coming off of the IL and Wilson Contreras, who's expected to be activated today. Newfar's not that far away. And you go, okay, I can finally start to see how this is really going to piece together, and you're going to get that 2013 offense that BK really likes to talk about.
Yeah, I love talking about that 2013
2004.
offense. It's a lot of fun. Here's what Mason Wynn has done against some of these pitchers that I referenced earlier. Against Webb, 1 for 4. Verlander, 1 for 3. Skeens, 0 for 3. Hey, man, everybody's got an off day. Wheeler, 1 for 3. Imanaga, 1 for 3. Hicks, 1 for 3. Glasnow, 0 for 2. Bobby Miller, 1 for 2. These dudes just hit good pitchers, man.
That Bobby Miller game, he may have been the only one with a hit.
They just hit against anybody you throw out there, and it feels like the better the pitcher that they go up against, the more they raise their game. That is a quality that Cardinals fans have been desperate for. And then they add an extra element to it, right? You know, you got the 5 tools. Well, there's another tool that Mason Wynn has, and it's called swagger and confidence. And he's got that in spades. And then there's another element to Burleson's game, which is likability. He's just a super freaking likable guy. And so we were talking about this before the show, and I'm curious if our text line has a better comparison for us. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. The YouTube chat is off and running at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Who's the comp for Alec Burleson? Bat-to-ball skills, a little... a bigger dude than what you typically anticipate that plays outfield and does so at a pretty reasonable rate outside of one game. Bad game last week. A weird one. Set that aside.
He got BKO'd.
The entire Marlins series was weird.
He did a backflip and thought he could make it look good.
Pretend it never happened. Likability factor, fun, young, productive. Like, what is left-handed? What is the comparison for Alec Burleson? Because I can't think of many guys at his age that produce like this, that are fun and likable like he is. It's a fun profile to have on your team. It's a rare profile to have on your team. And it's fun for the Cardinals to be able to develop somebody like this from that 2020 draft. An all-timer that the Cardinals were able to put together. Do you guys have a comparison in recent years?
I don't have a position player. I can come up with a pitcher that comes to mind. Joe Kelly is the last one that I can think of that people, it was a fan favorite. He was fun. He was doing all of the gimmicks in the dugout, but he's not a hitter. I don't know if you've had a hitter that's this.
We're getting a lot of Matt Adams.
Matt Adams was quiet, though.
Yeah,
like
I don't remember having like a... He's a good guy. I don't remember having a likable personality.
He had the nicknames. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from, is the Jumbo Pepsi, Big City. Like, that's probably where that comes from. And there's a similarity with Biscuit for Alec Burleson, the affectionately known Biscuit. I brought up Lance Berkman earlier. And that's what we're getting a lot of on the text line as well. Is I do think there's some similarity there. Berkman was known as a really good clubhouse guy. The difference is Berkman had a borderline Hall of Fame career by the time that he had arrived in St. Louis and was considered to be broken down right when he got here. And then, of course, was amazing for the Cardinals for a season. But I think that's probably the closest thing if you just made Berkman 12 years younger than what he actually was at the time that he got here.
Yeah, I can't really think of anybody outside of those two that really fit, because I can't think of a left-handed hitter or really anybody that had this kind of personality and was in the outfield nonetheless. Like, maybe Pham had a little bit of that, but he wasn't.
He didn't have likability. I love him, but I don't think he had likability.
I think it's a different kind of likability.
He has a likability of I'm worried you might stab me, so we're good.
Burleson is an everyman. Burleson is I could meet that dude at Schnucks today, and I would enjoy the 3 minutes that I had standing there with him.
Might order some food, and he might drop it off.
Exactly. But it's been fun, man. This is a team that needed some fun, and they've had that over the last few days. All right, with Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Plenty more Cardinals throughout the day today. Katie Woo joining us at 12 o'clock. Coming up next, though, yes, we will talk about the Sonny Gray decision. They pulled him after one hit allowed, Alex. Just one hit yesterday. 7 innings, less than 85 pitches. Was it the right call? Is this just something we're going to have to deal with this year with Sonny Gray? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Introducing Good Gravy, Holiday World's new family coaster. Got tickets now at holidayworld.com.
Hi, it's Randy Carricker with Jim Olive, the Auto Loan Pro from AutoLoanPro.com. And Jim, you have that AutoLoanPro.com playbook. And I know a lot of people don't understand their finances, but that'll help them.
Randy, if you go to the AutoLoanPro.com today and download the free playbook, you'll have an opportunity to kind of understand the entire car buying process and what it does, not only today, but for your future. It'll help you understand what it takes to get in a nice, reliable new vehicle of your choice and get driving today.
Download the playbook from AutoLoanPro.com today.
One-on-one ESPN has your chance to win free tickets to see the Rolling Stones. The legendary Rolling Stones are bringing their last North American 24 Hackney Diamonds tour to Thunder Ridge Nature Arena in Ridgedale, Missouri on July 21st. Find all the ticket details and find your chance to win a pair of free tickets for the Rolling Stones right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
I want them to turn black.
Who gets a swing and a miss? Sonny Gray has been absolutely magnificent again for the Cardinals. He sends us to the stretch after a remarkable game. He leads it 4-1.
He was on Perfect Game Watch yesterday with Alex and T-Bone on BK. 7 innings, 1 hit. Unfortunately, that hit went over the wall, ended up being a home run. That was the only run that Sonny Gray allowed yesterday. 8 strikeouts, no walks on the game. Finishes that 7 innings, 1 earned run. He's been really good, Alex. You look at what he's done since he said himself, quote, I pitched like bleep. He's been amazing ever since. He figured things out. He corrected it. He said, I got to get back to the middle. I got to get back to attacking hitters, and he's done exactly that over his past few starts. But yesterday, there was a bit of controversy once again as they pull him with just 80 pitches in the game. Here was Ollie Marmol after when asked, hey, what went into the decision to pull Sonny Gray at that spot?
He gave everything he had for 7 innings and did his job. It's up to the bullpen to finish it from there. It's hot. He's going to be on a 5-day moving forward, so we got to make sure we think through all of it. But I hear you. But he definitely gave us what he had today, and he did an exceptional job, man.
I hated it. I got to be honest with you guys. I absolutely hated it in the moment. I still don't like it now. I understand it. Like, I can have both of those thoughts in my mind simultaneously. I don't like pulling Sonny Gray when I think could have at least gotten another inning out of him. I do. And you could have had Sonny Gray give JoJo and Andrew Kittredge the day off. And now you go into today with them having another day of rest, which feels kind of important right now for those two guys that they're scuffling. You hand it over to Helsley in the 9th inning. That is the way that I would have preferred that they went about things yesterday. They did not do that. And it seems like, Alex, I'm just going to have to accept that this is how it's going to be. Sonny Gray is going to get you to about 85 pitches, and you hope that he gets through at least 6 with those 85 pitches. And you can decide for yourself if that's something that you're willing to accept, given the fact that he has a sub-3 ERA on the season and has a strikeout rate that is among the best of his career and is among the best in all of Major League Baseball this year. How'd you feel yesterday when you saw Sonny Gray not come back out for the 8th inning yesterday?
I didn't like it either. I said this before when Sonny wanted to be out of the game, to where it was like, man, this is your number one guy. And I understand what Ollie's saying. He did his job. I mean, 7 innings, we were begging for somebody to get 6 innings last year to do the quality that Sonny Gray has been doing. And that's 3 straight games where he has gone 7 innings or more. But he's also gone to only 84 pitches at the most in those last 3 starts. It just feels like there's more there in the tank with Sonny Gray. And for a bullpen that has been used a decent amount, if a guy who is pitching basically a perfect game up until that one hit and was sitting at 80 pitches, I'm going to let the guy go with it. I'm going to let the guy run a little bit more to see how far he can go. Now, what this tells me, Cardinals don't believe he can go any further because this guy hasn't touched 90 pitches. I couldn't even tell you the last time. I'm looking at the last 5 games. The closest he's got was 89 pitches. So he hasn't even touched 90 pitches since Chicago White Sox when he went 7 innings. So I understand why the Cardinals did it, and I understand what they're doing, but I'm on the same page as you. I didn't like it because at 80 pitches, I think that guy could give me maybe a complete game.
Yeah, I don't think he was going to give you a complete game. I don't think he was going to get that high, but he could have gotten you through 8. And you go to Helsley, turn it over to him in the 9th. Somebody on the text line said, BK, didn't you have the exact opposite opinion of this the last time that he started? I did. And the reason why is because he had lost effectiveness. Sonny Gray in the inning prior had gotten hit hard and wasn't throwing strikes anymore. So you could tell, okay, he doesn't have it the same way that you would want him to when he was pulled from that game. I didn't feel that way yesterday. Yesterday, I felt like he was still cruising. And I know that can be a very bad way to judge a pitcher because we've seen this before. Guy's cruising, then he gets into the next inning. He goes up against a batter for the 4th time. You're like, oh, should have seen this one coming. That didn't go the way we anticipated. But when you were up the way that they were, and you had that kind of a margin for error, I would have thrown him back out there for the 8th inning. Now, maybe Sonny Gray went up to Ollie and said, dude, I got nothing left in me. I am drained of all of my energy. It is hot as hell out there. That is true. It was freaking hot yesterday, guys. And he sweats a ton. Weird thing to say on the radio, but it's true. He went through like 4 jerseys the last time that they started a game with him.
Yeah, I don't blame him. I went through like 3 T-shirts on Saturday.
Maybe he was mentally and physically exhausted, and he had nothing left. All right, it is what it is. Just from me, who knows nothing, Joe Blow, watching on the TV in my 70-degree AC house, I felt like they should have gone to him in the 8th inning. I would have preferred it that way. I also think at this point, given what Alex said, which is that we haven't seen him go at least 90 pitches since the first week of May, I think this is the way they're going to operate with him moving forward. I think we should just anticipate. If he's close to 90 pitches, he's not going back out there for another inning because he's not getting above 90 pitches, and so they'll just go to the bullpen in that spot instead.
I think one thing you have to keep in the back of your mind, though, when you do that, it's going to bite you at some point. I personally feel like, man, when you're going to baby and covet the one person to make sure that he doesn't get injured, typically something happens with that. And I'm very concerned that the more you do that, the more likely down the end of the season is when something takes place with Sonny Gray.
Yeah, and the reason I don't like it is it goes back to the quote, I think it was last week when Ollie Marmol said that, we can't lose that guy. Yeah, every team basically says they can't lose their number 1.
Yep.
And I understand the Cardinals don't have a 2 compared to like the Phillies. I get it.
This team can't lose their 1, 2, 3.
I don't like managing scared though, and this is what that feels like. And look, I understand the bullpen's been great. So I understand why it's a little easier for Ollie Marmol to turn to that pen. But I also know that extra inning is pretty important because it takes an inning away from JoJo and Andrew Kittredge, which also matters as we get later on in the season. And as we've seen of late, JoJo and Kittredge have not been as effective as they were early on in the season. So I'm not a fan of it. I wasn't a fan of it last week. I'm not a fan of it this week. I think this week is a little bit more understandable if it is. In fact, he said, dude, it's 100 out. Get me in the AC, for God's sakes. It's blazing hot out here.
And look, if that were the
case, I'm in.
Everybody's on board with that because every fan sitting at Busch Stadium was thinking the same thing.
You know what's funny? Kyle Gibson, innings eater, right? We all agree with that?
Yeah.
He has started 14 games so far this season.
Are you about to tell me he's gone over 90 pitches, but like once?
Sonny Gray, 14 games so far this season. So they're at the exact same number of games. You know how many more innings Kyle Gibson has thrown so far this year than Sonny Gray?
This is a trick question. 3.
2.
0.1. He's thrown one more out than Kyle Gibson so far this year. Or excuse me, than Sonny Gray so far this year. So while it does feel like, hey, Sonny could give them more. Sonny could give them more. What are we doing? Sonny can give them more. He's doing his job. And I know that this is like a trigger point for Cardinals fans right now, yeah. Alex being one of them.
100 pitches is what a starter should throw.
Also, like, I wouldn't say Sonny's doing his job. I'd say Kyle Gibson's overachieving.
I think both can be true.
Pump the brakes, Gibby.
I mean, Sonny Gray has given the Cardinals more innings so far this year than like Zach Eflin has given to the Tampa Bay Rays, or Kevin Gossman or Framber Valdez have given to their respective teams. And these are legitimate innings eaters. So all things considered, Sonny has done.
Yeah, but if you're pitching that efficiently, then you should be able to give me another inning with 80 pitches.
I'm saying is Sonny Gray should have had the lead over Gibson after yesterday. That's all I'm saying.
You guys know I agree with you.
No, you don't. You don't agree with us.
So Sonny Gray has a 2.8 ERA on the season. He is striking out 11 batters per 9 innings. You signed an ace, and this is what a modern-day ace looks like.
No, I won't accept it.
It's frustrating.
Nola's not.
He's not getting as deep into games as maybe you would like to see. And yesterday, I was frustrated as I watched it. But Sonny Gray has an opposing batting average against of 189. He is striking out 32% of the batters that he faces. If you look at the peripheral numbers, Sonny Gray has essentially been Zach Wheeler so far this year.
How many innings for Sonny
83 and a third, I think is what it was.
Aaron Nola's at 94. That's a real number one.
Yep. Yeah. Your guy Logan Gilbert, 106.
Yeah! Still would have traded Dolan Gorman for him.
Logan Webb, who you saw yesterday, the modern day equivalent of Chris Carpenter, honestly, 105 innings so far this year.
That's a number one, T-Bone.
That dude is going 205 innings every year. By the way, Tyler Glasnow's arm's going to blow off here in the not too distant
but the Dodgers are just get us to the playoffs, man.
He's at 100 innings on the season. They need to shut him down. Yeah. Be like, dude, this is not going to work. He has thrown, I think it's 125 innings as his major league career.
He'll be an all-star, and the Dodgers will be like, hey, you're not pitching Tyler Glasnow this weekend.
He has never thrown more than 120 innings in a season. He is at 100.
You know what's funny? He's going to make 32 starts, throw 200 innings because he's a Dodger.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
And we were all like, you can't trade for him. It doesn't stay healthy.
I very much did not say that.
Yeah, you did.
T-Bone,
you were there. He was like, you can't trade for him. You can't stay healthy.
I said they should go get Chris Sale or Tyler Glasnow and attach that to Sonny
somehow
Gray.
Chris Sale's healthy.
You said Jose Quintana. That's what I remember.
I said not to trade for Chris Sale. I'll be up front on that one. I said, no way in hell that guy's hurt all the time.
That's pretty good, huh?
You're going to see him shut down the Cardinals on Wednesday.
Coming up in 15 minutes, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. But next, we have seen the league's biggest superstar absolutely carry his team when it matters the most. We're watching that as we're watching a collapse right now in the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario back with you to talk about my friends over at Rhino Shield, updating the exterior of your home with the sun beating down on the house over these last couple of days. If you don't have Rhino Shield, that paint is going to deteriorate over time. If it's not UV protected, it's going to start washing away. It's going to start getting some of that sun damage on it, and it's not going to look brand new. Or maybe you just have an old house that needs updating. Then it's time to call Rhino Shield, because when I say paint, that's what you get over the counter at hardware stores, and that is going to last for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, but over time it's going to deteriorate. What Rhino Shield uses is a ceramic coating. It's a 2 to 3 coating process that sticks 8 to 10 times thicker than any paint you're going to put on your exterior. So what that means is I painted my house with Rhino Shield with that ceramic coating 3 years ago, and it looks brand new today. It's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays, and it's all backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. So give Darren a call today at Rhino Shield. Tell him you heard Alex Ferrario talk about it and get that updated look for the exterior of your home or your business. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Giants yesterday 5-3 as they complete a 3-game sweep of San Francisco. And tonight they start a 3-game set with the Atlanta Braves. 6:45 will be first pitch as Lance Lynn will be on the mound for the St. Louis Cardinals. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we've got Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
We want the cup.
The chant from this standing room only crowd in this beautiful hockey arena, which opened in 2016. The series gets dragged back to South Florida for a winner-take-all Stanley Cup Finals Game 7.
Not a whole lot of intrigue to that third period as the Edmonton Oilers ran away with it. That audio courtesy of ESPN as Edmonton on Friday night wins 5-1 in game number 6, forcing the best two words in sports, a Game 7 in Florida in the Stanley Cup Final. Alex, I can't believe it. I didn't think Edmonton had this in them. They're down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Final. They looked dead. Looked completely like they were lifeless. And Florida was going to run away with this thing. This was their time. They had gone through the struggles. Now they're going to rise to the top, the mountaintop. And they're going to be the champions of the hockey world. And then Connor McDavid said, over my cold dead body. And over the past couple of games prior to game number 6, he carried them to those few victories. And then in game 6, it wasn't him. Do you know how many shots on goal he had in game number 6?
I think it was only like 1.
T-Bone?
0.
0 shots on goal in that game.
That's
0.
false. They just took one.
And
away.
they win 5-1 in that one. Now, he was driving offense. Like, he was still a really good player for Edmonton in game 6, but they find a way to win that one 5-1. They have now won 8-1, 5-3, and 5-1 over their last 3 games in the Stanley Cup Final, forcing a game 7, an ultimate deciding game that you will hear right here on 101 ESPN tonight with pregame coverage starting at 6:30. Alex, how have they done this? What changed from the first 3 games of this series to what we've seen in the last 3?
Well, video game version of Connor McDavid was engaged by game 4, and I don't know what changed, frankly. And I was reading something earlier today on The Athletic that was talking about what McDavid is doing. And look, like the numbers he's putting up is like Wayne Gretzky-esque. But if you watch just the way he's playing, they compared it to what Crosby did when the Penguins won their second of back-to-back cups in 2017. And if you go back and look at that roster, points-wise, Malkin was right up there. Phil Kessel was up there. Jake Gensel was up there, all in terms of points. But Sidney Crosby played like 20 minutes a game and just carried that team on his shoulders. And that's what's changed for me. McDavid is driving all of the offense. He's playing so many minutes a night that he's just forcing Florida to make mistakes. And you never want to take away credit from a team when they're playing well. And I do give Edmonton a ton of credit for what they're doing because they give Florida 0 space out there. But Florida's doing this to themselves. The only reason Florida has put themselves in this position, I think they've given up 3 shorthanded goals in their last 3 games. Their power play has been ineffective. Watch some of the decisions they're making. It's like Edmonton has forced them into this fear shell that they're afraid to make the plays that they were making in games 1, 2, and 3 because they know if they don't convert on it, Edmonton is going to make them pay with their speed. And Florida, you can't play scared in the playoffs. If you play scared, you make turnovers. You make backhanded passes at the blue line. Not to be cruel, but I think it was T-Bone that texted, or maybe it was UBK. Florida looked like the Blues on the power play in game 6.
That was a me too.
They kept pushing the puck backwards at the blue line. Like, here you go, guys. And Edmonton is not playing passive hockey. So what's changed is Edmonton has forced Florida into this fear factor that's like, I can't make a mistake, where Edmonton basically says, if I make a mistake, we were already going to lose the series down 3-0. So screw it. We'll keep playing this way.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes down to Matthew Tkachuk not being the same play, not being as effective recently as well. I can't explain why this is happening. I'd be curious to see a breakdown on it of did Edmonton change the way they were matching up against his line? Did he just stop playing the way that he was early in the series? We know he plays a very hard, grinded out style. They've played a lot of hockey in this postseason. Maybe that physical brand is starting to wear him down a bit instead of wearing the opposition down the way that it's supposed to. He's a -7 on the ice in the last 4 games, Alex.
Yeah.
He went from a -2 to a -3 +1 in a loss, 5-3 against Edmonton. And then in the last game, he was a -3 as well. His line's getting just completely dominated when they're on the ice. And it doesn't make sense.
And I don't know if they've made this change in the last game or not, but I don't know why they have Matthew Tkachuk playing where he is. If I'm them, I move him up a spot. Yeah, he's been playing with Bennett and Rodriguez. I move him up. And I know Barkov, Verhaeghe, and Reinhart have been great, but they're obviously not producing points, and McDavid's found ways to get on the board. I would be moving lines around because that's a mismatch for you right now.
If this ends up going the Oilers' direction, if Edmonton pulls this thing off, man, and they go down to Florida, they win Game 7, they end up coming back from down 3-0 in the series to win the Stanley Cup final. Will it be remembered for Edmonton with a massive comeback, or will it be remembered as the Panthers choking this thing away?
I think if it was any team other than the Oilers and Connor McDavid, it would be remembered as Florida's choking.
Yeah.
But because it's McDavid, the one, what did you say his point total was in games 4, 5, and 6?
I think it was like 6 or 8 points, something like that.
I mean, he put himself in the Gretzky conversation, but based off of 3 games. So I truly believe it's going to be, and you're breaking a drought that's been, since the 60s that a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. Or not the 60s, the 80s. I really think the narrative will be the Edmonton Oilers doing something that hasn't happened since the 40s.
I think the legend will grow of Connor McDavid and what he did, but it'll be known as a Panthers choke. How do you blow a 3-0 series lead? And it's not like those 3 games were like, holy cow, they were just one bounce away where the Oilers. Panthers dominated games 1 through 3. Like, they had everything working. They got in on the forecheck. They were able to pin the Oilers in their own zone, and they were able to shut down Connor McDavid. And then, what happened in Looney Tunes, where those monsters came in and stole the powers of the NBA players, that's what happened to the Panthers. I think it's going to be known as the legend will grow of Connor McDavid and the unbelievable postseason that he had, especially when he wins the Conn Smythe. But it's going to be remembered as the Panthers choking this away, because this is an unbelievable 3-0 collapse.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be remembered for Edmonton because of what Alex said. This is the Connor McDavid crowning achievement. This is the moment where he officially becomes face of the NHL in every possible way. There's nothing left that people can take away from him. Previously, you've been able to say, yeah, he's putting up all those great numbers. That's fine. Wait till the playoffs come. It's a different style in the postseason. You'll see.
Yeah, because he's been putting up the numbers in the playoffs, and there's nothing to show for it.
Exactly. And so, you could say that, and it would be true. It's really hard to disagree with that. If he comes back from down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup final and finds a way to win and then is named, which he would, I think no matter what happens in Game 7, he should be Conn Smythe. He earns it.
Unless Barkov has a hat trick in that game and McDavid doesn't have a shot on goal, it's going to be McDavid.
He is the Conn Smythe winner no matter what for this postseason going into Game 7, in my opinion. But this is the crowning achievement for him. And so it will be similar to when LeBron won the finals down 3-1 against the Golden State Warriors. There's a lot that went into that. There's the kick by Draymond Green, the Warriors collapse, the Cavs end up winning it. But you remember it because it was LeBron's crowning achievement in Cleveland. He finally got his title there. And I think that's how this will ultimately be remembered for Edmonton. I would also say this. I would be fascinated to see what the plan is then for Florida. This back-to-back seasons where they got so close. They got so close. And their team's about to get super expensive. And they're about to have some big-time decisions to make. And they have to decide if they end up 1 game away and they choked it away, do you just bring back the same team, or now do you make some more significant changes? And it could just be based on a bounce of the puck here or there tonight. That's what could determine the future outlook for the Florida Panthers, because we're 7-8 days away from the start of the NHL's offseason with free agency coming up, and they've got some big decisions to make. There's so much on the line tonight in this game.
You know what happens for me if they lose this game, the Florida Panthers, and this goes to T-Bone's theory. You find a way to move Bobrovsky. Because, dude, Bobrovsky has been a liability these last 3 games.
Yeah, I'm not
Skinner,
doing that based on a few games, though. He was awesome.
But it's not just a few games. Sergei Bobrovsky has done this for the last 4 years, to where he has been good.
But if you don't have him, then what?
You find your Stuart Skinner.
Yeah.
And I know you're searching for
done. How long did it take for the Oilers
But here's why you do it.
I'm not trading away a goalie when I'm in contention.
Here's why you do it.
Want him on his pay.
You're paying him 11% of the cap. He's $10 million. And $10 million for a dude that for back-to-back seasons is choked in the Stanley Cup final. That's going to be the first route that if I'm Florida, I'm looking at saying, we need our defense. We need more offense, because look what took place in this Oilers series. What's the problem? The problem is a goaltender that can't stop the puck in games 4, 5, and 6 when we were facing elimination.
Sure.
I think I'd bring back the whole squad again.
I would too.
I think just because it'd be different if you'd lost back-to-back Stanley Cups and it was 4-1, 4-2. When you're 1 game away and that group has that kind of a collapse, I think it even adds fuel to the fire of those guys being able to get back there as a group, find a way to go and win the Stanley Cup. So I would personally bring back that entire group as long as I can.
I like this idea from John on our YouTube page. If Florida doesn't win, it's time to trade Tkachuk to the Blues. Torrey Krug is available, and apparently he works hard.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up next, questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service Text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and get them in right now. We'll get to Katie Woo, Cardinals Insider for The Athletic, in less than 10 minutes. All right, from the 314, Alex, what players do you think the Blues could make an offer sheet for, and do you think they'll actually do it this offseason? Martin Necas, baby. Here we go.
Yeah, Martin Necas. I would consider... who was the guy that we talked about last week? It was with...
Pinto?
Yeah, Shane Pinto. That's the other one I would do. Those are the two guys that I would throw a lot of money. Not a lot of money. I would go 6 years, $6 million to, and force the team to match, and the team's not going to be able to because that's way too much money. Necas is the one, though, and as soon as July 1st starts, if I'm Doug Armstrong, I am doing that because Carolina's not going... Unless he gets traded at the draft, Carolina's not getting what they want for him. And that means I would give an offer sheet because I know Necas is going to sign it.
I do Necas, Pinto. I don't know if there's anybody else. We talked about a couple. Is Byfield one of them? For some reason, that name stuck out.
Yeah, Byfield was the other one. I think the Kings are going to have to match that, though, no matter what.
I would probably do Necas. And I'd be interested in Pinto because he put up good numbers in like half of a season last year. So I think those would be the two for me.
I just love the age of Pinto.
Well, I don't know if we have that many picks
all
to give
three
away.
accept it. Well, you don't have all. I think if you send one out, you can't send any others out because those are your draft picks. Because if both of them agree to it, then you don't have the first round picks to agree.
Isn't there another Ford we talked about? Am I drawn, or was it Byfield? Maybe
I think it was Byfield, Pinto, and Necas were the ones that made the most sense. And then, of course, that Harley from Dallas, but you're not going to get him because Dallas is going to match it.
I would do the Necas thing. I really would. I think I would. That would be the guy that I'd be looking at. And I know he plays no defense. Like, he is horrible defensively. And if I'm saying that about a guy that plays in Carolina, you know it's not going to be great here. But he's skilled. He's talented. He's pretty young. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg in terms of the salary that you have to give out. It's like $6.5 million probably. That's right in line with where the Blues like to have their forwards. Necas would be the guy.
Our boy Banny will get him to buy in.
I love the idea of Pinto, though. 23 years old, man. Oh, that
Makes
would be
sense.
good. 23, and then you'll have Dvorsky, who's 21, Snuggerud, 21, Bolduc, 22, Neighbors, 22. Like, that's the core right there.
From the 636, guys, do you think the Cardinals will stay at or above 500 the rest of the season?
Yes.
I'm sure, no, because I think they're going to dip like a game or two below. Like, I don't think they're always going to be 500 or better the rest of the season, but I don't think you're going to see them fall 5 to 7 games below 500.
I think the next week will tell you a lot about this, like one way or the other. If they're able to win at least 2 out of 3 against Atlanta, I think the answer to that is yes. Because I don't think they're going to go through this massive dry spell the rest of the way. And that's what it would require if you start to get a few games above 500 now. So I am optimistic about the way that this week's going to go. So I say, yeah, I think they're going to stay at or above 500 the rest of the way now.
Yeah.
First time, by the way, since Albert and Yachty retired that you are 2 games above 500. How about that?
Nice.
That's not a good thing, guys.
To be fair, it's only 1 year, you know?
Year and a half.
But not like he just referenced, like, whatever. It's not like he referenced, like, the 06 team,
I mean,
for
let's
example.
be honest. Yachty was retired when he was playing.
Exactly.
So.
I would say yes, because I think worst case scenario, you only win 1 against the Braves, so you'd be at 500 in that case. I think you're better than the Reds. I think you're better than the Pirates, and you're better than Washington and the Cubs. The only team that's better than you in this stretch till the All-Star break is the Royals and the Braves, arguably. But you could surprisingly win 2 or 3 from them. So, yeah, I think they'll be above 500 by the time we get to the break.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Final question here from the 314. Guys, what did you think of Ollie Marmol's quotes the other day to Ben Hochman in the Post-Dispatch? If you guys missed this, Benjamin Hochman was out at Busch Stadium over the weekend, and he asked, coming off of course, the Rickwood game, in which Reggie Jackson had those powerful comments pregame. Ollie his family's from the Dominican, and he said, Ollie, have you dealt with anything like that? Have you dealt with any comments that fans would be surprised by? And he said, no doubt about it, more than you'd think, actually. Then when asked what happened here, he said, I've been called that here, talking about in St. Louis. Different words that I won't repeat publicly, but not that far removed. To hear him calling some of the things that he's been through, I think is really good for people to understand it and shed light on it. Because sometimes you're a fan of the team and of the sport, and you get into what's going on, you forget that you're still actually yelling at people, end quote. I've seen this become kind of a controversy in St. Louis, and I don't totally understand why. He's not saying that every person inside of the stadium is yelling racial slurs at him during the game. He's saying that it has happened, and it does happen. Like, we've all seen this at sporting events before. It can get nasty, man. And if you're somebody that's doing that, like, stop it. First of all, it's stupid. And second of all, I think it's totally fine for, when asked directly about it, he didn't just bring this up randomly. When asked, hey, what is your experience like with this? To give your honest answer on what your experience has been with that, especially given the backdrop of what we all just saw at Rickwood. He's not saying, hey, my experience in St. Louis is basically what Reggie Jackson went through in Birmingham. That's not what he said. He said there are people that have called me racial slurs during the game, and that's unacceptable. And it's part of why last week when we discussed this coming off of the Rickwood game, I said, yes, we have come a long way from where we were. And yes, there is still progress to go. None of this should be particularly controversial. And so when I saw this and I saw the firestorm that it caused on social media over the weekend, I was kind of shocked by it. I shouldn't be, but I guess I was.
Yeah, I don't think I was shocked by it because there are still a lot of bad people out there that take pride in doing these types of things, yelling slurs, and it's not just at Ollie. I mean, you see different players talk about it from start to finish of the calendar year. Like, it is still an ongoing problem, and I thought it was a great piece by Hockman, and I think it was great by Ollie to be upfront and honest with that, especially coming up. Like, I would assume a lot of the backlash comes from, it's like, oh, Ollie's just trying to get into the spotlight after all of this stuff, and it's like, man, no, like, this is coming off of a Rickwood Fields game.
That he was asked a question directly
exactly.
about it.
You're shedding light on this scenario and talking about it, and good on Ollie to be upfront and honest about that so that we can try and find ways to stop this rather than it continue to happen.
Man, some jackass on the text line, tell me you're woke without telling me you're woke. Ollie was telling the truth.
What?
If I'm woke because the manager of the baseball team said, yes, I have heard racial slurs directed at me, and I assume he's telling the truth, like, then I guess go ahead and call me that. That's fine. But come on, guys. We got to be better. All right. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for in or out. You give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we're in or out here on BK and Ferrario. But next, Katie Woo, Cardinals Insider for The Athletic here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's great to be back on a Monday because that means that we get to talk to Katie Woo, Cardinals Insider for The Athletic, and she joins us now via the 101 ESPN hotline. Katie, we appreciate the time as always, and it's under positive circumstances this week. Cardinals having swept the San Francisco Giants. How you doing today?
Katie, sorry, I tried to get rid of them because I know the last couple of Mondays have been so great, but we couldn't do it.
Yeah, I heard the voice and I was like, sounds familiar. Can't quite put in like a name to it, but let me tell you guys. Well, the worst part about BK not being on the show for the last 3 weeks, I'm not taking it personally, it's fine, was that every time he texts me to set something up, he sends me multiple photos of his sweet, sweet son, and it's like honestly a highlight of my Sunday. Like, yes, I have to talk to BK, but the baby, so
Katie,
I'll take it.
It's disgusting. He just flaunts his kids' pictures out there just, to get people's
I'm proud
attention.
of him,
It's
man.
unbelievable.
It's fun. He's a growing little boy. He turns 1 year old in 2 weeks, and I like sending pictures when I reach out to our weeklies, Katie and JR. I send the update of Luca on my.
What's JR's reaction to getting photos?
JR thinks he's very cute.
He texts me every week, and he's like, BK, just sent me another picture of his kid. He's like, thank you for not sending me pictures of your kid,
All right,
Alex.
let's get into this.
And I said, I have 100 of them. They can't fit in one picture.
Katie, we opened the show today by talking about the 1-2 punch that the Cardinals are starting to develop with Alec Burleson and Mason Wynn at the top of their lineup. What are you seeing right now from those guys?
Good things. It's crazy. This is what I love about the baseball season is come February, I would not have thought that the most formidable 1-2 punch atop the lineup would be Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson. And then when you think about it, you think about two guys, high contact rates, good bat-to-ball skills. They just were a little young, maybe a little inexperienced, and you're like, oh, actually that does make sense that they would work so well in those roles. We've seen it a lot with Major League Baseball teams putting their best overall hitter, number 2 in the lineup. For a while, that was Paul Goldschmidt's spot. Now, we know about Goldie's struggles this year, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that Mason Wynn is one of the top leadoff hitters in baseball, and Alec Burleson, if you're talking about consistency, is the best hitter on this Cardinals team right now. And you're looking at the top of the lineup, we've had a lot of gripes about the middle of it, but that top has done a nice job in maybe alleviating some pressure off Goldie, off Arenado, off Nolan Gorman to some extent, and doing the production right at the top. So I really like what we're seeing from Mason and Burleson. Got some wheels. I think 2 steals for Burley yesterday. Who would have thought?
Love to see it.
And it just continues to impress me at the top of the lineup what those two guys can do.
Katie, what's the impact if Burleson is turning into one of these faces of the team? Because I didn't expect he or Mason Wynn to do that. I thought that was going to be Walker, Gorman, or Nootbaar.
Yeah, agreed. Now, I think what we're seeing with Burleson is the real deal. And I know last year, and I understood both sides of this argument, there was a lot of talk about the batted ball profile and a lot of talk about that batted ball profile not necessarily matching up with the on-field results. And there's a lot of frustration from fans, I understand, because at the end of the day, it's a production-based game. But let's think about where Burleson was in his career. I know he debuted in 22, but 23, his first full season. And it was frustrating, I think, for everyone to see, like, hey, the metrics really say that he should be doing something much better than this. The batted ball metrics this season are almost exactly the same as last year. Now you're seeing what the Cardinals so heavily believed in Burleson, and I truly believe he can maybe not necessarily take the place, but be a placeholder for some of these guys like you mentioned. And if you get a healthy Nootbaar back, you get a better, more consistent Walker back, then you're looking at all 3 of those guys being that supplementary power that we talked about early in the season that was lacking. And then, all of a sudden, BK and I are right about the offense.
Yes.
So multiple things to be hoping for, but all jokes aside, I do think Burleson has slugged his way into that supplementary power role, and I think you can put him right up there with those guys we already talked about.
So another guy that should, I would assume, be batting towards the top of the lineup sooner rather than later is Wilson Contreras. Katie, what's your understanding on when we could see Wilson back in the lineup for the Cardinals?
I would expect, I don't know when the lineup is supposed to come out, like 2:15, so a couple hours. We should see Wilson Contreras, number 40, back in that lineup. I'm not sure where he's going to hit. I do know he'll be behind the plate. I would be, I would like to see him back cleanup just because Nolan Gorman is going through another one of those extreme slumps. So it'd be nice to have some consistent power in the cleanup hole. But all signs point to a Contreras activation today. He DH'd yesterday from Memphis. The big test for him was being able to catch back-to-back games. He did so Friday and Saturday. So I would be shocked if Wilson Contreras was not activated today. I do expect him to be in the lineup, and what a great boost that will be for this Cardinals team that is already playing really consistent ball. I think that's only going to jolt them even more. So, yeah, super exciting for Contreras back weeks ahead of his projected timeline. What a gamer.
So, Katie, when he comes back and that does jolt the offense more, and then let's go down the path that, Lars Nootbaar, Tommy Edman are back sooner rather than later. How does that impact your decision at the trade deadline if you're John Mozeliak, or does it?
Well, this is exactly what Mo was talking about when I talked to him earlier in the month, that injuries and health is ultimately going to dictate where the Cardinals go at the deadline. Now, I know there's still 5-ish weeks to go. I don't see one realm of possibility where the Cardinals sell at this deadline. I just don't see that happening. I think it's to which degree they buy. Now, if you have a healthy Contreras, Tommy Edman, the most positive news we've heard about him in a while, inching closer to a rehab assignment. Same with Lars Nootbaar. You get those three guys back. You have Burleson slugging, and you hope that Goldschmidt and Arenado can figure out the second half. Then you're thinking you're pretty solid about the offense. Then it goes to pitching. Surprise, who would have thought the Cardinals would be thinking about pitching at the deadline? But I thought Mo gave me a pretty telling comment. Well, he reiterated that it's premature for him to, definitively say what the Cardinals are going to do at the deadline. He did say, well, if you're a contender, you're always looking for pitching. We've heard about the setback with Steven Matz. He's essentially restarting his entire rehab process. Best case scenario, 4 to 6 weeks before a return. That puts him right around the first week of August. If I'm the Cardinals, I'm taking that Matz injury once again as, all right, we need to get some depth here. So my early take is that the Cardinals will focus primarily once again on starting pitching. It makes sense at this point. You can no longer trust Steven Matz to stay healthy. We know that the pitching depths, they don't exist with this organization right now. So I would expect the Cardinals to be in the mix for a starter. It just, again, depends to which degree.
And I was just going to ask that. How high do you go if you're Mo, knowing that Matz isn't coming back, seeing what Sonny Gray is doing, and understanding what the rest of this rotation looks like?
Well, you have Sonny Gray and you have Kyle Gibson coming up and being a formidable 1-2 for the regular season. I know Cardinals fans, and I certainly get it, would like to see another frontline starter to pair with Gray. Then you have Gibson as your number 3. Let's pump the brakes a little bit and understand that that's not really how the Cardinals operate. Now, John Mozeliak can only operate to the extension that the DeWitts allow. If your ownership right now, that's what you have to be weighing. Is it time to give more reins to Mo, or do you do status quo, right? You're looking at guys like Eric Fetty, for example, is one that I think would be the perfect Cardinal if you're looking at past history, right? He's under team control through next year. He's 31, doesn't cost too much, just came back from playing in Asia, fits all the prototypes of what the Cardinals are looking for. That's what I expect St. Louis to be in. Should fans desire more? Absolutely. But just based on past history with this ball club, with this ownership, and what Mo has done at the deadline, I would imagine, things can change over the next 4 or 5 weeks, but I would imagine that you're looking at a John Mozeliak patented trade, go out and get a starter that's like, okay, and all of a sudden becomes a pivotal part in your second half.
Also, Eric Fetty's legitimately good.
He is actually very good.
He's not the pitcher. This is something that I always struggle with, Katie, is do I evaluate somebody based on the pitcher that they are, the pitcher that they were? And Eric Fetty, the pitcher that he is right now, is a really good one. And he's changed his arsenal completely compared to the last time that we saw him. And on the season, everybody wants Garrett Crochet. He's going to be like the belle of the ball at the deadline. Well, this guy has a better ERA than Garrett Crochet on the season. So it becomes a difficult conversation when we kind of have these... We go round and round and round about whether or not this guy's good enough. Well, so far he's been really freaking good, and I think he would help the Cardinals, to put it lightly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we talk about Garrett Crochet. We've talked about Jesus Luzardo, but he just landed on the 60-day IL, so the likelihood that the Miami Marlins trade him isn't super high. Again, with that ownership, though, you can never say never to things like that. I do think Eric Fetty is the number one guy on the second tier. I actually think he'd fit the Cardinals pretty perfectly. So, again, really early, things are going to change, but as we sit here on June 24th, I would expect the Cardinals to be involved in the starting pitching market, looking for a middle rotation starter.
Katie, final question that I have for you. And we're talking to Katie Woo, Cardinals Insider for The Athletic. Find her great work over there. Follow her on Twitter at KatieJWoo. When this team, if this team, gets fully healthy, where does Nolan Arenado hit in the order?
Oh, good question. I think if Nolan had it his way, if he was hitting the way that he wants to and expected to this year, he'd be hitting 4. He'd have Contreras 5. I don't know what that means for Goldie. I think, honestly, where Goldschmidt and Arenado hit depends on everybody else. But I still think the Cardinals believe that Goldschmidt and Arenado will make up their heart of the order. You add Contreras back in, and that's what I think is big news. I think Wilson Contreras coming back takes some of that pressure off Goldschmidt and Arenado. You've seen other guys step up, right? Mason, Alec, guys like that. But I think Goldschmidt and Arenado weigh that pressure differently. I think they came into the season knowing they had to be those guys, and then when Contreras went down, that maybe compounded their struggles even more. So I know Nolan's got a forearm thing going on. It doesn't sound super serious, probably will not need an IL stint. But I'm interested to see how his at-bats look when Wilson comes back, and maybe he feels like, okay, we can share the workload here. If that goes according to plan, I would expect Arenado back in the cleanup spot. It's where he's been his whole career, but obviously he'll have to earn that with how he plays.
If he doesn't start hitting, it's going to be one hell of a test for Ollie Marmol. Because if he has a 685 OPS and you have guys around him, to your point, like if Gorman starts hitting, if Nootbaar's back, if Donovan's still hitting, and Burleson and Wynn are hitting like this, and you've got Contreras, those guys should probably all be hitting ahead of him, no?
I would agree, and I don't think Nolan's the kind of guy that would – I know he's not the kind of guy that would demand he stays in one part of the order. We've already seen him ask to be dropped fifth because he wasn't producing in the cleanup role. But let's think of it this way. Worst-case scenario, you have Nolan Arenado hitting like sixth or seventh. What does that say about your offense, right? That says, okay, here's the offense that we thought they were going to have this whole time. We'll go ahead and see. Obviously, no breaking news here. The Cardinals are at their best when Nolan Arenado is at his best. But it's not the worst problem to have if other hitters are stepping up.
She's Katie Woo. Great work over at The Athletic. You can find her on Twitter at KatieJWoo, and each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Katie, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy this week. Enjoy this extended homestand. We'll talk with you again next week.
You got it, guys. Nice to be back.
You got it. That's Katie Woo joining us as she does each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Always appreciate her time here on the show. I think that's going to be fascinating, man. And we're still probably a few weeks away from that. You got to get Nootbaar back. That's another big one for them. Contreras hopefully being added into the lineup today. You got to get Nolan Arenado healthy. Like, there's a lot of factors that go in to what we were just talking about. But, man, if this team is fully right, fully healthy, and you don't see a change in production for Goldie and Arenado, I will be fascinated to see where they hit. I really will, because you're getting, I mean, an okay average this year out of Nolan Arenado, but that's kind of it. He's batting .260, but with no on base, no real slugging percentage to speak of, and there have been a couple of hot streaks for Paul Goldschmidt, but his on base percentage as of today, we are now almost halfway through the season, and he's getting on base less than 30% of the time. Those aren't guys that you typically would anticipate being in the middle of the order, and yet it's Goldie and Arenado, and they're making $60 million, and they have the back of the baseball card, so it's going to be a big test for them to figure out what do you do with these guys when your team is fully healthy.
And I think it's a lot of the what-ifs, because before we talk about moving these guys down, Nootbaar's got to get healthy, one, but you got to get him back into where he's fully at his normal self, because there's going to be, same with Contreras, there's going to be a little bit of growing pains after being out for as long as they are, but when you're back to that level, I mean, I could make the argument that Goldie and Arenado should not be hitting higher than fifth, because for the four guys that should be hitting above them, to me, Wynn, Burleson, Nootbaar, and Contreras. And I would even argue you can't argue Brendan Donovan too. So we're talking about four guys for sure that are above Goldie and Arenado, maybe five, and then if Nolan Gorman's in his hot streak, you're pushing him up on that list.
Yeah, and I, as much as I feel the urge to potentially buy into the St. Louis Cardinals, I can't do it right now because they still have their two almost least productive hitters hitting in the top part of their order in Goldie and Arenado. And I'm just being honest. I'm tired of hearing that it's Goldie and Arenado because, guys, we're 3 months into the season at this point. You know who they're not? They're not Goldie and Arenado of old. This is Goldie and Arenado. I don't expect a hot streak. I don't expect this whole pressure thing to be what gets them going again. This is who they are. This is who Goldie and Arenado are for this season. We can start afresh when we get to 2025. This year, the Cardinals have to operate on this is what Paul Goldschmidt is, this is what Nolan Arenado is, and adjust accordingly with how they make their lineup.
There's a lot of time. Like, we'll see what it looks like. Nootbaar hasn't even gone out on a rehab assignment yet. And somebody, by the way, Lisa texts in, why doesn't anybody talk about Edman? Just because he's the furthest away. That's why right now. We were still a little ways away from him returning to the lineup. I think people are saying, like, All-Star break probably-ish around then for him. My lineup when all of these guys are healthy looks as follows. Wynn at the top. Newton, Burleson, 2-3. You could decide the order that you want them to, but I would probably go those guys 2-3. Contreras 4, Donovan 5, Goldie 6, Gorman 7, Arenado 8.
Yeah, That would be
If
mine.
we're just going purely by production and we want to get the left-right matchups the way that they like to, so that way you don't have like 3 lefties in a row anywhere in your order, I think that's the way that you got to do it.
Donovan ninth?
Donovan I had in the 5 hole here.
Oh, okay.
Edmund, center fielder, whoever that is
So
batting
center
ninth
fielder
for you.
ninth. Yeah, I think that's the
So
lineup.
Carlson for a little while, and then probably Edmund or Ciani, depending on what it looks like. I think that's your order. But that means Nolan Arenado is potentially batting 8th. And I hear what Katie's saying about, hey, he wanted to be batting 5th. There's a big difference between batting 5th in the lineup and batting 8th. 8th is you're the worst non-defensive center field position hitter in our lineup. Right?
8th is like when they put the kid in right field in softball. Nothing's going to come to you, so just go stand out there.
It's a harsh reality, man. It is. But look at the production. Eventually, the production has to matter. I don't know that we're there yet, but eventually it will. If you get to the All-Star break and he's still got an OPS below 700, well, the dudes that have an OPS that starts with a 7 are batting above you. Mm-hmm. And there's a good amount of them eventually, whenever they end up coming back from the injured list. All right, coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out here on 101 ESPN. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. For in or out, you give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. I'll get us started today. Boys, in or out? The Cardinals will trade for a starter at the deadline that has an ERA of 3.5 or below.
Well, good thing I didn't yell in right away.
What's Eric Fetty?
3.0.
3.5.
Yeah. I'll say him in. I think that one's going to be the most likely that they trade for. Right-handed pitcher, under control. A little bit of a mongoon. Maybe we'll see if he's up for playing defense for the Blues next year. But that's the guy I think is going to be most likely to make a deal for. So I will say in.
6'4", 200 pounds.
Big dude could totally play second pair defense for the Blues. I wonder if he could play off of his offhand.
Sure.
We need some lefties.
I would say in, because Fetty's an option. Tyler Anderson somehow has an ERA below 2.5, which is even another category.
That one I don't
seems
trust.
to make sense. So I'll say in. I think they'll get somebody with a below 3.5 ERA, but I'm not saying that St. Louis is going to like him.
Here are some of the potential options. I don't know what Boston's going to do this year at the deadline. Feels like they're going to probably stick in it. And if they do, Tanner Houck certainly would not be available, but just throw his name in there. Tyler Anderson, 2.5 ERA so far this year. Jack Flaherty, who the Cardinals will not be trading for, has a 2.9 ERA so far this season.
Don't even say his name.
Eric Fetty, 3.0. Garrett Crochet, just to throw that out there, 3.25. Jose Barrios, I don't know what Toronto's plans are, 3.4. Chris Bassett, 3.5. Pretty decent number of pitchers. Nick Pivetta right around a 4.
Didn't mention Jose Quintana.
Kikuchi's right at 4. Now,
what about Jose Quintana?
He's at a 5.
Oh, that's our guy right there.
I don't think the Mets are going to be selling.
They're going to be buying.
This year's race is weird, man, because you have a good 2-week stretch. No matter who you are in the National League, you're right back in it to the point where you probably aren't going to be selling. Or you're not going to be selling, and you might be more. You go literally from a seller to a buyer. Really quickly.
I think they wanted to sell, but now they're in a sticky situation, so I don't know what they're going to do.
I'm in. I think that they will end up trading. I think they're going to trade for Eric Fetty.
I'm disappointed. Everybody
That feels
overlooked
so
my sticky
Cardinals-y.
comment.
I heard it, buddy. I
would also, by the way, support it. If they trade for Eric Fetty, I will ring their praises.
I'm
here
not
on
a
the
big
show.
fan, though, of the CK at the end of his first name. Like, pick one or the other, you know?
It's just like J.A. Hap.
Period.
That was James Adam.
J-Hap.
Yeah, not a fan.
Alex, what do you got for us?
Guys, in or out, we're getting overtime tonight in Game 7.
Out.
How about this? Steve Mears just said this. It's only happened twice in the last 70 years. The last time overtime in Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final, 1954.
Wow.
I'm saying
70
in.
years.
I'm saying in. And I think it's the last 20 years, only once has the over hit in a Game 7.
Really?
And the over-under is set at 5.5. Yeah. Like the last 20 years, there's only been, this is the 6th Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final in the last 20 years. I do think this one's going to overtime tonight. I think you were going to see like a 1-1 tie, and somebody is going to win in an upset fashion in the like first or second overtime.
And then Kachuk turns it over, McDavid scores. Man.
Why do you do that to the St. Louis kid, man?
Chef's
What do
kiss.
you got for us?
Unbelievable. You
Guys,
trash.
in or out? Before the All-Star break, we will see Ryan Fernandez take over the top right-handed high-leverage reliever role.
I'm going to say out because I think that they trust their veterans.
Yeah,
For better or
too
worse, I
much.
think they trust their veterans. And for that reason, I think you will continue to see it be Andrew Kittredge. However, who do I trust more when they come into those spots? I trust
Kyle
Ryan
Leahy.
Fernandez more.
Oh.
I trust Ryan Fernandez. So
Yeah.
I'm out, but not because I wouldn't do it that way.
I'm out.
Because I think what the Cardinals will do is different than what I
I
would.
think
a
how many
manager
times
problem.
I think the amount of times we've seen Andrew Kittredge go in the high leverage situation and not work out well, and it still goes back to him. That tells you everything you need to know.
He hasn't blown many games. He's given up runs, but mostly it's like, I'm going to give up runs right up to the point where I can't give up anymore.
He wants to see what everybody's butt clenchers can do.
Yeah, you know how we feel comfortable with a 3-run lead? Hear me out. What if I made it a 1-run?
What if we made these games more intense?
Yeah.
He's just making things really interesting for Ryan Helsley. Hey, you thought you didn't have a save opportunity tonight? Just wait.
I'd say get your popcorn, but Nolan Corbin can't have any. So
Yeah, I'd say I'm going to say in on this. I think if Kittredge continues to kind of scuffle, before the All-Star break, they'll have to finally say, you know what? You know who doesn't have to worry about Elaine? Ryan Fernandez, because he's good against both righties and lefties. Kittredge is bad against lefties. JoJo's numbers are starting to spike against righties. So
got to be careful with
A
that back
plus B
tightness, though.
equals
You know.
C. So I would say, I think yes. I think Fernandez will be in that 8th inning role by the time we get to the All-Star break.
All right, let's get it to some of these from the text line from the 314. In or out, the Blues will trade up in the draft and take a defenseman.
I want to say in so bad, but I don't know if it's going to happen. The two teams that you can try and trade with, you have to move Booch. And as much as I would like to move Booch, I think there's a chance you could get a better player with it. So I'm going to say out.
I'm going to say out as well, just because don't feel like we see that very often, and I'm going to play the odds, so I'm going to say out.
Now, here's one that
also out.
Here's the one I find interesting. I wonder if the Blues trade up to get back in the first round, to get a late first-round pick. Like, they've got 2 seconds and 2/3. If a player is gone by the time a team is ready to draft at 26, 27, 28, I would say keep an eye out for the Blues to move back into the first round and get another player.
They're not going to have that third. That's going to be going to Colorado for Ross Colton. All right, 314-399-9646.
No, it's going to Carolina, man.
From the 314, that's next year's picks. In or out, Brandon Saad will be traded at the draft this year.
I'll say out at the draft. I wonder if it happens once free agency starts rolling and they start to find out more of an idea and a better picture of what their roster looks like.
And for other teams.
Yeah, teams got to figure out what they're going to do.
Going out to the market and looking at what's available, and then they see, okay, so I could go get Jake DeBrusk on a 5-year, $6 million contract, or I could have 2 years at like $4 million for Brandon Saad. I would rather the latter. I think he does have legitimate value. Not a lot, like third-round pick, something like that, but if you decided to make him available, I think somebody would be interested. I'm out. I don't think they'll trade him because of where they're at in their life.
Well, and in all honesty, typically teams find out the first or second day of free agency that the free agent they thought they were going to re-sign doesn't want to re-sign, and then that's when that team has to go to the market to look for trade. So it's more possible after the draft.
I'll say out because I think they'll move him at the deadline. That's where I would say it's probably more likely. And I was going to say maybe get more value at the deadline, but he's got another, 2 years. So people would like him at the beginning of the year, but I still think you can get a good haul for him at the trade deadline. I'll say out. I think that's when it happens.
Couple more of these. In or out, Pedro Pajes will continue to get time behind the plate with Contreras DHing more often. I'm in on this. I think you'll see, at least at the very beginning of Contreras returning, him going 1 out of every 3 behind the plate. They'll eventually work him in more, like 2 out of 3 behind the plate, and then eventually back-to-backs behind the plate. But while they're still getting him back, especially prior to the All-Star break, I think they're going to take this thing a little easy with him. And Pedro Pajes has shown to be more than capable back there. You don't have a ton of great DH options right now. So, yeah, I'm in on this. I think you'll still see a decent amount of Pedro Pajes behind the plate.
I say out because if I know how Contreras works, he's going to demand to be in there 2 out of 3.
Fair.
He's going to want to play, and he's going to want to play. I mean, I wouldn't have even – if I'm the manager, I don't know if I put him behind the plate tonight. If it's where he's going to start. I think I start at DH because, slow play this one. I think Contreras is going to demand to be in there 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I'm saying out because they wouldn't have made it such a big deal to catch back-to-back if they weren't going to have him catch back-to-back. So I think they're going to go with catching 2 of 3, 3 of 4, and then you get Pajes to start. Now, when Herrera comes back, I think Pajes is the guy that serves as the quote-unquote backup catcher, and they'll carry 3 catchers.
I think so, too. You just don't have a roster crunch right now. Where that gets interesting is when they get into, all of these guys returning. Nootbaar comes back. Edman comes back. Now you've got a roster crunch. Another thing to keep in mind, by the way, see what happens with Michael Ciani. Went down, I think it was the game on Saturday, where he had the injury with his shoulder, potentially. Ribs is what they called it.
Said.
He wasn't available yesterday. Didn't sound like anything too serious, but we've heard this before. See what happens today. Dylan Carlson maybe going to get a little bit of a run out there. Looks good yesterday. Played a good game yesterday, man. Credit where it's due.
Can't get upset. The guy got an RBI with Brandon Crawford at second base. Come on, man.
I thought he played well overall. Good defensively. Didn't make any spectacular plays, but was fine. Made all the plays that he needed to. And offensively, he's been better lately. Just credit where it's due. He's been better lately. Hopefully that continues. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll dive into the jug drawer. But next, are the Cardinals finally playing a style of baseball that appeals to you, the fans? 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get your thoughts in on that. Coming up next, you're on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals beat the Giants yesterday 5-3 as they sweep San Francisco in the 3-game set. And they start a 3-game set with the Atlanta Braves tonight. 6:45 will be first pitch. Lance Lynn will be on the mound for St. Louis. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers, as well as pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Cardinals trying to get more than one game over 500 for the first time in over a year. The pitch. Ball game. Helsley seals it down. Cardinals win it 5-3. They sweep the Giants and await the Braves tomorrow night.
That's what it sounded like on Bally Sports Midwest yesterday as the Cardinals win 3 straight. They sweep the San Francisco Giants, first to Rick Wood, and then over the weekend here in St. Louis with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. The Cardinals are 39-37. That means they are 2 games above 500. It is indeed allowed for the Cardinals to be 2 games above 500. You may not have known that because it hasn't happened since Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina retired 2 years ago. The last time this was the case was at the end of the 2022 season. Alex, the Cardinals are playing some good baseball right now. If you look at what they've done, I think it's 9 of their last 12 series now. They have either won the series or split the series. They are pitching well. In this stretch of games, they are tied for 7th in Major League Baseball since Mother's Day in overall team ERA. That is 3rd best in the National League. If you want to look at batting average for the Cardinals, they are 4th in Major League Baseball since May 12th. You want to look at OPS plus, a little more nerdy with it. 9th in Major League Baseball, 4th in the National League. They are in most statistical categories a top 3 team in the National League over the course of the last 5 weeks, and a top 10 team in all of Major League Baseball over this stretch of time. They're also playing an entertaining brand of baseball. You watch over the weekend, they're taking the extra base. They are stealing bases no matter who is on, including when Pedro Pajes and Alec Burleson are on. Here's what Ollie Marmol had to say about that yesterday after the game.
You look at this series, you look specifically at today's game, that's the style of baseball that the city subscribes to. I mean, we applied pressure nonstop today. The way that game started with Webb, I mean, when hits it, Burleson goes ahead and knocks him in. A couple pitches later, he's standing on second. He takes 2 bags. Pajes takes a bag. I mean, you go down the list, and it was nonstop pressure. If they gave us an inch, we took every bit of it. And that's the style of baseball we need to keep playing. And if you look back at the last month, guys are pretty convicted about that style of ball. It's looked better, and we're starting to get healthy as well, which is also a really, really good thing.
Are we starting to see a style that is appealing to Cardinals fans, Alex? I feel like I can sense it from the 2 of you, and I think you guys are representative more of the fan base than I am, certainly. I'm a little more positive on this team, generally speaking. Are you guys starting to feel some of those good vibes that are coming from the St. Louis Cardinals right now?
Yeah, I mean, I am. It's a brand of baseball that has me a lot more glued to the television than what I would say I was the last couple of years, because the last couple of years it felt like it was all about the power, and if you didn't have it, then you weren't going to have success, and of course the pitching stunk, so it was hard to watch that. This year it does feel a lot more like the aggressive style of baseball that Ollie just referenced there, and he's right. Like, the people that can deny, well, that's not what we want to see, this is what people have been pleading for the longest time. You know, get back to more whitey ball where you're running the bases more. Like, they're doing it. They're being more aggressive on the base paths. You have guys that have the ability to take the extra base, and that is more appealing baseball. I think the part for me is that it's still, as much as this is the brand that they're playing, it works in some series, and then other series it just does not work for the Cardinals. And maybe that's just some of, you got to get on base to actually achieve this, and you've got to have guys that are coming through in the clutch situations. But it just feels like some series you're going to get this from the Cardinals, and then the others you're going to get back to the...
What are you referencing there? Are you just talking about the steals?
The steals, the aggressiveness on the base paths, and taking the extra bases and coming through with those. Like, the 2 series that I'm thinking of course, are the losses most recently, the Rockies and the Marlins. Sometimes you've got it, and sometimes it bites you in the face. And I think the part that's difficult is finding the consistency with it. But that's what an average team does.
Yeah, I can subscribe to this. I think this is what you were expecting from the Cardinals, is they're putting pressure on teams, and they're really doing it at home. 20-15 or 21-15 at home so far this season. This is what the Cardinals should be, is a team that can find a way to get on base, apply a little bit of pressure, even doing so without some of their speediest guys. You know, Tommy Edmonds, like their best pure base stealer at 30 bags, and he hasn't been healthy all year. And Wynn's been dealing with a back issue. I think you're starting to see him become a little bit more healthy, become more aggressive. And they're doing a great job of finding ways to steal second base and do what we talked about last week, which is manufacturing slug. Are the Cardinals going to be able to manufacture slug? Because they don't hit for a ton of power, but can they manufacture it? And they did that against San Francisco. They got a tell on Logan Webb. They're able to take advantage, be aggressive, put the pressure on the San Francisco Giants. That looked a lot like what it probably should for the Cardinals, where I do think they are a better team on paper against San Francisco. So you should be the one that looks like it left the series as the more dominant force, and that's the way it was this weekend. Some of those series have felt off like Miami and Colorado, to where at times it feels like they play down to their competition. Not this weekend. This weekend was the brand of baseball that the Cardinals should be, which is remain aggressive on the base paths, try and manufacture slug, try and get that extra base, do the productive outs thing that BK really loves to talk about. That's what the Cardinals team should be this year, because they don't hit for a ton of just pure power.
And sometimes they're getting that pure power. That's what I think stood out to me. Like, I understand the base running is really fun. This weekend you played with power. Like, you got some home runs yesterday. That's what really put you over the top in that game. The base running was great. The runs were put on the board because of power. And when you have guys like Alec Burleson and Brendan Donovan, and hopefully eventually Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, but certainly Wilson Contreras, when you've got these guys hitting for power, they're going for extra bases on a regular, consistent basis. That has to be the foundation of what you're doing offensively. That's what every team is trying to do offensively. And the Cardinals, yes, it is a bit inconsistent because that's the way the power works. You'll have Nolan Gorman where he's going through a stretch of 30 games where he looks like the best player in America. And then the next 30 games, which is the stretch that we're in right now, his batting average for the season dips below 200 because of how terrible he's been at the plate. I'm going to bet on that dude because eventually he's going to get back to the power that he showed for that significant stretch of games. So something that bothers me, we get this from the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Somebody said, guys, since Mother's Day, what a stat. What about since Christmas? It's 6 weeks of baseball. Baseball's 162 games. This is always a pick your sample size type of a show. This is how baseball works, guys. Like, it goes by stretches. You play differently depending on who's available to you, depending on what the bats are like at any given time. Like, this is how it goes. Baseball's a really, really long season, and so you can break it down into chunks. The Cardinals, for the first 40 games of the season, were terrible. They're a bad baseball team. They're 15-24 after 39 games. Since then, which is the stretch that I'm talking about, essentially the first half of what we saw so far and the second half of what we have seen so far, they have been night and day different. The first 39 games, they were bad. Since then, we're at 74 games now? So the last 35 games, they've been a really good baseball team, guys. They're playing quality baseball. They're pitching well for the most part, other than that weird 10-day stretch. They're defending really well. They are applying pressure on the bases when they have the opportunity to do so, or they get a tell off of the pitcher. And they're hitting pretty well for the most part. Not great, but pretty darn well. This is a good team, man. Not a great one, but a pretty good one right now. And when you go up against a team like San Francisco, yes, this is what we're judging them against. It's a weird national league, but the San Francisco Giants were one of your direct competitors for a playoff spot right now. And you just looked like the significantly better baseball team. You looked against them like the Brewers did against you earlier in the season. That's a good thing. We can just give them credit sometimes, guys. I know it's hard because for 2 years now, we've watched a team that hasn't been particularly competitive. Well, right now they are. And so what I'm curious about is this team going to start picking up some of the support from fans? Are they going to get people to buy in to what they're doing? Because it does feel like there's some of the waiting for the other shoe to drop still happening with this year's Cardinals team based upon what we've seen recently.
And if I'm honest with it, I don't think that goes away until the playoffs. And we've talked about it. And you're not wrong in the breaking up the increments. It's in all sports. Like Ken Hitchcock used to talk about it in hockey. He doesn't judge the season as a whole. He goes by 10-game increments. What did you do for 10 games? What do you do the next 10 games? That's how you start to see some trends with the team. But it just, because of what the last, and again, this is from my standpoint, from what has happened over the last 4 years, I don't think any of that matters to Cardinals fans until you get to the playoffs. And if you do some type of damage in the playoffs where you win a wild card round, you get to the DS, that's when I think people start to take the regular season seriously. Because for now, it feels like, yeah, you'll get into the playoffs, but
there's like a lag. There's like a season of lag.
Yeah, because this feels like, yeah, you got in the playoffs, but you were gifted a playoff spot because the National League sucks. But if you get into the playoffs and you beat, let's say, the Brewers in a wild card matchup or the Phillies in a wild card matchup, all right, you did something I didn't expect you to do. Now the regular season starts to matter because now you're building towards playoff success.
And I wonder if it becomes, if you start to kind of lift and separate. We talked about this stretch going into it where I think it's, of the current stretch they're in now, it was like 8 of their 10 series were against wild card teams that were in that muddy middle in the National League. If you can kind of lift and separate yourself from that group, I think you can kind of wash away that first portion of the season. But I do think, and I still have this in the back of my mind as well, of, okay, well, if you can do that in the first portion of the season, that doesn't mean you can't revert back to that. You know, you played that way for a reason. It's because you're capable of playing that way. And if that's the case, I think what a lot of Cardinals fans, and it's kind of the same thought that I have, though I'm starting to get away from it some, is, okay, well, if they play like that again, well, then suddenly they can really start falling down the table because of how tight the NL wildcard race is.
Yeah, I mean, they could. I think they look like a different team right now. I think they've found who they are. I think that's the difference for me. Also, like, in that stretch of games, they were without Sonny Gray for a decent portion of it. That matters, man.
Pitching was never their problem in that stretch.
Yeah, I was going to say, pitching's always been fine for them.
That's where I would push
Offense
back on
is
that.
the part that I'm worried about.
They did have some pitching issues during that stretch as well.
The rotation had some issues, but it was better than it was a year ago. Their problem was offense. And if the offense can play like that, it can play like that again.
Yeah,
and that's where the problem is.
You were winning games.
I think the young guys, though, are what gives me confidence.
Maybe, but
young guys to me would scream a problem because we know young guys can really flow throughout a season. Now, I think it's different with Wynn and Burley because they seem to be playing better.
But we also haven't seen those guys in a full season yet. So, like, yeah, it could continue this way, but it also could go down another way. We don't have anything to fall back on. Like Nolan Gorman, you look at and you say he's going to go through cold streaks because we've seen a full season of it.
That's something else that I would reference, though, is like I'm watching Gorman go through a really cold streak right now, and the Cardinals are still winning.
Because you're getting hot streaks from Wynn and Burleson.
That's how this is supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to look like for this lineup. Is while one guy's going through a cold stretch, you have a couple other guys that are hot, and they can carry your lineup for a couple of weeks. And then that guy that was going through the cold streak starts to heat back up again, which I assume will happen eventually for Nolan Gorman. And when that happens, dude, Nolan Gorman can carry an offense for a 2-week stretch. He can be a guy that, like, the way that Kyle Schwarber does for the Phillies, that can be Gorman. And it was Gorman for a couple of weeks. And then he went through the cold streak again. And now we get to see the ebbs and the flows with that. The reason why I think Burleson and Wynn are really important to the success of this Cardinals team offensively this year is that they're consistent. I mentioned earlier how they've done against the quality pitching on your schedule. That's when you would typically see these guys go through a slump. But they hit for average. And so you've got guys at the top of your order right now that can hit for average, and it's not just the on-base machine that's their flotation device. Okay, so we've got them. Brendan Donovan has been now, don't look, but for the last, 2 months, he's been Brendan Donovan again. He's getting on base. He's hitting for a little bit of power. He's been a really good hitter. Okay, well, there's another piece that we can add to that. If you eventually get Gorman going again, okay, well, there's another one. Wilson Contreras. I'm not assuming he's going to be a 965 OPS guy like he was before he got hurt the entirety of the season, but is he going to be 800 or above? I would be pretty surprised if he's not, honestly. It's just who he's been his entire major league career. So you add him to, we're up to 5-6 guys that I feel pretty good about without even talking about Goldie or Arenado. That's where I think this offense, can they go through a slump like that? Sure, they could if everybody goes cold once again. But what was abnormal about that stretch is that everybody simultaneously went cold. That is very rarely the case in Major League Baseball for a lineup that has this many solid hitters in it. Not great, but solid hitters.
I get it, man. You're drinking the Kool-Aid. And I understand it. And hopefully I'm drinking that cherry Kool-Aid with you by the end of the season.
But cherry's gross, man.
Oh, it's red Kool-Aid. What other red Kool-Aid are you going to drink? Tropical punch? Tropical punch is disgusting. Let's be honest here. Tropical punch is nasty. Watermelon, I think, is like pink, and that's even worse. It's cherry. That's the Kool-Aid he's drinking right now.
Wisconsin would be pink Kool-Aid.
And I'll drink it with you. But you know what happens? When I was a little kid, I thought I was putting sugar in Kool-Aid, and it was salt, and I drank it, and I almost gagged. You're selling me Kool-Aid. I don't know if it's salt or sugar yet. Yeah. I'll tell you at the end of the season if it's salt or sugar.
I'm not forgetting the first part of the year. You don't fall. I don't remember if they were 9 or 10 games below 500.
9.
You don't fall 9 games below 500 by accident.
I remember.
This is BK.
We were talking about firing the manager. We talked about firing the hitting coach. I can't just forget that. And that's where
But look at the recent teams that won the World Series, man. They had the same kinds of struggles early on in the season.
Was Arizona ever 9 games below 500? I don't know if they
I
were
don't
or
think
not.
so.
Okay. I don't know. I can't forget about the early portion of the
Phillies
season.
literally fired their manager a couple of years ago.
I get it. We didn't do that.
they also had Bryce
I still see
Harper.
Ollie Marmol, and I'm not even blaming Ollie. I don't even think Ollie's a problem on this roster or with this team. I think there's been some weird decisions, but I haven't had a major issue with Ollie Marmol this season. I'm just now forgetting about the 9 games below 500 because a good team doesn't do that. A good team doesn't accidentally fall 9 games below 500.
Unless you're the Phillies a couple of years ago, in which case you absolutely do that.
Were they 9 games below 500?
Let's check.
Yeah, okay. When you have the numbers, then I'll listen to it.
Good team also doesn't lose to the Rocky or lose the Marlins, split the series with the
I think we have
Rockies.
done way too much of that. Like,
I think
I
you're
don't
forgetting
think so.
about crucial parts of the season.
I always go back to that, man. I always go back to that.
yeah, I know you do. A lot of Cardinals fans
That
do.
felt a little Tony.
It was
That
very
felt a little Tony, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think that we...
You
I'm tired
pulled a little
of
Kadarius
waving
over
around
there,
your
okay?
Men in Black little flashy thing
Yeah.
there and saying forget about the
Don't
first
worry about
month.
this. Look at what we did.
Phillies were 4 games below 500.
Yeah.
When they fired their
Step
manager.
back, buddy. Just red Kool-Aid.
With salt.
That is not what I thought you were doing there. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, the Steven Matz injury might be a blessing in disguise for the Cardinals, not because they want him injured, but because of what it makes them do. We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. Juncture is next here on 101 ESPN. All right, Alex T-Bone on BK. T-Bone, what do you got for us today in the junk drawer, man?
All right, guys, I saw we're working on a 5th movie in a franchise coming out here soon. I don't know if you guys are a fan of this or not. Eddie Murphy has confirmed that there will be a Shrek 5 that comes out in 2025, and they're working on a donkey movie itself.
I thought you were going to say Nutty Professor, and I was like, God, please don't do that.
There have been 5 of those.
Been 4, haven't there?
Really?
I thought there have.
Are we 4 movies in on Nutty Professor?
I don't even know what Nutty Professor is.
Maybe there's been 3. Text line, help me out here. How many Nutty Professors? Second one sucked. 3. There have been 3? Okay.
3 Nutty Professors.
Well, I didn't see 3, so you can understand why I thought there have been 4 of them.
Because technically there have been 4, but one was a remake. The original came out in 1963. The one that we think of as the original is actually a remake. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. I'm okay with this. I like the Shrek movies. I think they've all been.
I didn't know there was 4.
I think they've all been good.
I've seen the 4th.
Yeah, 4th one was okay.
I feel like I've only seen 2.
Yeah, I'd say 2 or 3
the
for me.
The 3rd one had Justin Timberlake in it.
I don't think I ever saw that.
Yeah, that one was good. The 4th one was all right. I thought the 2nd and the 3rd one were better than the 4th one. But, I mean, I'm okay with it. I think they do a good enough job with it. And you got to figure who they're marketing to. They're marketing to kids. Or us who watched the first one.
I was about to say.
When did the
Disney's
first one
really
come out?
smart with this. They wait like 10 years after one comes out. Like they did this with
Disney,
Toy
is
Story. Pixar, right?
No, this is
DreamWorks.
DreamWorks. I'll say it's not Disney.
My bad. Thinking of they just came out with the Shrek Land at Universal.
But you're right, though. Disney does it well because they did it with this Inside Out, too, which I think is like broken box office record since it's come out.
Yeah, somebody said that it was going to be a total flop, and then it like broke every record possible.
Disney movies are never flops.
I think the first Shrek movie came out.
1998.
It makes me feel really old.
2001.
Wow. Yeah. That sounds about right.
I feel kind of old. I was only 2.
That sounds about right. Still quote that with my daughters all the time before we go to bed. Say our goodnight prayers, we read our books, and then, we talk about what we want to do in the morning, and then I look at them and I say, and in the morning, I'm making waffles.
That's such a great line.
Great line.
Man, Toy Story, Shrek.
I want to go back and watch Shrek now.
Dude, they're good, man. They
I gotta go watch 3 and 4 because I have no remembrance of those.
Do they hold up?
I thought they do. The third one to me, I thought was really good. The way they plotted it out and had like an extended storyline with it.
Never seen 3. Never seen 4. Shrek Forever After.
That must be the 4th one.
I'm starting to question if I've seen 2.
I've definitely seen 2.
Second one.
I think that was it. That was the information.
Yeah, the second one was when he goes to Fiona's castle.
Okay,
the original Nutty Professor was with Jerry Lewis.
Wow, I did not know that was a remake. Hey, man, a couple weekends ago, I saw the new Bad Boys film, and it's rare that sequels are better than the original, and that one to me was Bad Boys. So
I feel like each Bad Boys has gotten better than the last.
Dude, this last one was phenomenal.
Don't give spoilers.
I won't, but
I've got a little one at home, which makes it more difficult to get to the theater.
Oh, no, put them down in front of it. It'll be fine. You can do it. Just bring them with you. It's good. It's a good movie, family for all ages.
We went to a comedy show on Saturday.
Took your kid to that? You can't take the kid.
No. First night out in a minute. I think I underestimated how much work goes into. Now, it worked out great. We had an absolute blast. We ended up going to a place called Small Batch, by the way. The host was a listener, so he gave us a table even though they were fully booked. Appreciate him. Shout out to my guy.
This is not a place where we do free endorsements.
But then after that, we went to the show. But you got to do so much to get the kid ready to go over to grandma's house.
Oh yeah,
and then so you give yourself an extra hour beforehand to get everything prepared, ready to go, and then you drop them off, and then you eventually can actually go to the comedy show.
So let's follow up from Friday. Did you guys, do the drugs that you talked about over the weekend?
Shrooms? Nope. That's when I'm 85.
Sure. 85.
I don't know if a comedy show would be the place that I would want to try that for the first time. I'm going to go out on a limb.
No, if there's ever a place you want to try that.
What are those things called where you can look up
Cirque
at the
du
ceiling?
Soleil?
You look at the ceiling and it's they can do the space adventures.
Oh, sure. You go to the Sphere.
I can't remember yeah, there you go.
Go to the Sphere. Whoa. That's the place to do it.
We should have did that for the draft, man.
We should have
just watching the draft.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes. Speaking of the draft, The Athletic thinks the Blues are in serious need of an upgrade on the wing. Could that be coming via the draft? We'll talk about that in about 15 minutes. But next, the Steven Matz injury might end up being a blessing in disguise for the Cardinals. We'll explain why next year on 101 ESPN.
So I had the moment over the weekend, the moment that everybody dreads with their HVAC system, the air conditioning, it went out. And, of course, it goes out when it's as hot as it can be outside. But thankfully, I'm with Classic Air Care. So I gave them a call over the weekend, and they said they would have somebody out on Monday to check the unit. And they were out there this morning at 9 a.m. to look at it, to get it up and running, and explaining to me what we're going to have to do in purchasing a new HVAC system because 28 years old, it finally went kaput. But this is why I love Classic Air Care, because they came out today. They walked my wife through everything, had the estimate ready to go for us, and they've got financing options at 0% for 18 months. And they explained that, look, when we're ready to go, we can get this whole process done in a few days. So make sure you're with a company that's out there to take care of you and is able to help you immediately. And that's why I love Classic Air Care. If you don't believe me, check out the hundreds of reviews that are up on Google Plus, a 4.8 rating. You can have them come out and estimate for an HVAC system, or just fine-tune the one that you have for this hot summer we are in the midst of. Check them out online, Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
All right, so over the weekend, there was some news that Steven Matz is going to get shut down again for at least the next couple of weeks. This is going to be an extended absence. He's now been shut down multiple times this year due to the back issue. He didn't respond well to his most recent outing. And by the way, it was a really good one. He went 3 innings. I think it was 3 perfect innings, if I'm not mistaken. And now he's going to be down for the next little while. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, I think this is a blessing in disguise for the Cardinals. Not that you wanted Steven Matz to be hurt, but now it forces some urgency. And I think they should have always operated as if Steven Matz was a cherry on the top, not a necessity. And what I think the Cardinals sometimes do is they see a piece that is there right now and assume it's always going to be on the chessboard for them. And it's not the case. Especially with Steven Matz, we know now at this point in his major league career, he's rarely going to be available for you. So even if he was able to come back from this injury healthy, I would have assumed at some point he's going to get hurt again. So now you can't assume he's going to be healthy. So the Cardinals have to go into the next month or so of the season, and that's what you've got available to you prior to making decisions at the deadline, saying Steven Matz is unavailable. What do we do? What does this mean for you, Alex? With now you have a guy in Palante as your legit number 5 starter right now. How are you viewing what the Cardinals need to do with their rotation now that this news is out there?
I think you have to make a trade for a starting pitcher. And if I'm the Cardinals, I'm looking at this as I have to trade for somebody that's an upgrade over Lance Lynn. And I know a lot of people are probably saying, no, you need to trade for a number 2. I don't think the Cardinals are looking at it that way. I think the Cardinals believe Lance Lynn can be a great number 5. Andre Pallante then becomes a number 6 for us. We've got to go out there and find somebody that pitches better than Lance Lynn, because that sets them up to where you've got Gray, Michaelis, Gibson, insert acquisition here, and that's the 1 through 4 that you're going to roll with for the rest of the season. And you provide a little bit more depth now to your pitching staff with Lance Lynn, Andre Pallante. I think this is a blessing in disguise for the Cardinals, because now you can take all of the excuses off of the board of, well, we need to wait to see who we've got. And if he comes back, we've got a starting pitcher and we don't need to make a trade. Now you can't use that excuse. Now we don't have Steven Matz, so we have to acquire a pitcher. I think Cardinals fans need to temper the expectation, because they will not view this as we need a number 2, not for how Michaelis and Gibson have been pitching.
It doesn't change my opinion on what they need to do, but I do think it does help the Cardinals, because I do think they would have fallen trap to, oh, look, we've got Matz back. We have our number 5 now, and we've got Pallante as a 6, which would have been terrible thinking from the front office perspective. But it doesn't change my mind, because I thought they always needed to add an upgrade to the rotation, whether Matz was healthy or Pallante's, there's the 5. Because best case scenario, Steven Matz is in your bullpen. Best case scenario, Andre Pallante's probably not on your 26-man roster. And that's not a shot against Andre Pallante, but that's probably your best case scenario. Or he serves as a guy that's quote-unquote lefty out of the bullpen that's right-handed. But I think it puts them in a spot where they have to upgrade, and I think it is upgrade at the 2 spot. Now, when I say that, I think it's going to be somebody that you probably have to squint at and say, really? Eric Fetty's going to be our 2? Really? Kikuchi or Tyler Anderson's going to be our number 2? But yes, they're pitching like that right now. And I think that's the kind of upgrade that they are looking for, is just someone that on paper this season is better than Kyle Gibson, because Kyle Gibson is probably perfectly set as a 3 or 4 starter for you once you get to the playoffs. Same with Miles Michaelis or Lance Lynn.
So this is something that I wanted to bring up, because now that Jesus Luzardo is on the injured list, he's going to be out for the next couple of months. He's very unlikely to be dealt at the deadline, and even if he is, he's unlikely to pitch for anybody this season. I am struggling to come up with names that people would find as acceptable in terms of who that guy is that you're referencing there, Alex, T-Bone. The number 2 starter, a guy that can be a front end of the rotation pitcher that will go up against Aaron Nola in a series, and you say, we've got a really good shot in this one. We are not at a significant deficit in this specific game. I think that the guy that a lot of people will bring up is Garrett Crochet, but if you're willing to do that, you got to talk about, like, Jordan Walker. Like, that's the kind of return we're discussing if the Cardinals are going to get into that market. I still don't believe he's going to be dealt at the deadline. I don't think Garrett Crochet is going to be offered to anybody. I don't think that the Houston Astros are going to be sellers. They're only 4 games out right now, and we've still got another month prior to the deadline. They're playing a little bit better baseball. The American League is coming back to them a bit. Who's the guy that you guys think is going to be traded at this year's deadline that has the name recognition, has the pedigree, has everything that would be required for Cardinals fans to look at and say, that's our number 2 starter. I'm all in with that. Mo did it. He finally went and got the guy that nobody saw him going out there to acquire. Who is that pitcher? Because I don't really see one right now.
I think unless it's Garrett Crochet, I don't believe there's a pitcher that falls into that category for Cardinals fans, because a lot of the guys that are going to get traded, Cardinals fans are going to have to search to find out what he's done this season, because you just don't hear the name. Like, the one for me would be Luis Severino. I think that's one that's got the track record. He's pitching like a number 2 so far this season, but I still think that's going to be underwhelming to Cardinals fans because of what the last few years have been for Luis Severino, and it's been less than impressive. So I don't think there is another starting pitcher that realistically could get traded. There might be some surprise guys if teams admit they're sellers and trade pieces away. But, like, if we're talking Eric Fetty and Tyler Anderson, Kikuchi, nobody's going to believe that's a number 2 that's going to be satisfied with that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is, like, unless Houston became sellers and they made Valdez available, he's, like, the only guy that maybe I look at this list. And Toronto's interesting because, like, I think they're probably going to be sellers, but a lot of the guys that they have in terms of, like, who I would think as a significant upgrade, I think names that would be household are Jose Sparrios, Chris Bassett, Kevin Gossman. Well, all those guys are locked up under term. Like, Bassett's probably the one that becomes available, but I don't think he's been very good this year. So I don't know who that name is that Cardinals fans would look at and say, yeah, that was clearly the number 2 starter that you should be looking at and try and get.
Because I think Eric Fetty's the guy, but he's not going to feel like the guy. Eric Fetty, everything that you look at for him suggests, if you had never seen Eric Fetty pitch in the major leagues before, and he had the same history as Cubs starter from Japan. Why am I drawing Imanaga. If he was just, his name was Shota Imanaga. You just flipped him, right? And Eric Fetty came over. He's 31 years old, just like Shota Imanaga, and his entire history was somewhere else, and you had never seen him pitch in the big leagues before. And he comes over and has this exact same success. Nothing else about him has changed other than instead of having the beginning of his career in the major leagues, he had that over in Japan. We would look at Eric Fetty this year, Alex, and say to ourselves, hot damn, that is the guy you need, because look at how good this guy is. He's been amazing so far for the White Sox. That is exactly the kind of pitcher that the Cardinals are lacking as a mid-rotation starter. Let's throw out number 2, just mid-rotation starter, somebody behind Sonny Gray and in front of the back-end starters that they currently have available to them. That's who Eric Fetty is right now. But we can't do that because he does have his history in the major leagues. And his history is as a number 5 starter with a 5 ERA who was so bad that he had to go overseas to be able to get it figured out. And so that's going to be in the back of mind as Cardinals fans look at him and say, we got that dude that was so bad he couldn't even get a job in Major League Baseball and had to go figure it out overseas. The answer is yes, that might be the case. The thing is, his price is going to be pretty significant. It's going to be steep at the deadline. Because it's not just the case for you, it's the case for everybody that is a contender across Major League Baseball that needs a starter. It's not going to come cheap this year to go out and get an Eric Fetty because there are so few options that are available at this year's deadline. And it is why, I'm going through some of the teams that could sell. Tyler Anderson is going to be at or near the top of the list for teams. Tyler Anderson, every underlying number suggests this ain't real. He's got a 2.5 ERA right now. Don't trade for that because it's going to look a lot like it did last year when the Phillies ended up trading for Lorenzen, and he became a reliever that barely pitched for them once they got to the postseason. Jack Flaherty's been great. Anybody buying that? You want to sign up for that?
Unless you want Wilson Contreras to be an outfielder.
Yeah. Who else? Luis Severino. Been really good so far this year. Not striking anybody out. You betting on that health?
He had 10 strikeouts yesterday against the Cubs.
Yeah, he's got a strikeout rate below 8 per 9 innings.
The free swinging Cubs.
They're working on it.
Yeah, he's there.
I think Luis Severino would be a more than adequate acquisition, but do I trust his health? No, absolutely not. And his history recently is not good either. So there's just not a lot of options out there right now. Maybe that changes by the time we get to the trade deadline, but I asked the question of who would be acceptable for Cardinals fans, because I think the answer is nobody among the list of guys that are likely to be traded this year at the deadline. And that brings us back to Eric Fetty, who is not sexy, but is a legitimately good starting pitcher that can absolutely come in and help you as a number 2 starter. And yes, fast lane guys, if they're listening right now, that means having to give up young pitching. That means having to trade multiple starters that are in your system right now to get a guy that's ready to go today. And the hope is for the Cardinals with their young arms, someday they become what Eric Fetty is right now. And the likelihood is they won't. The overwhelming likelihood is they will never be as good as Eric Fetty is right now for you. And you can get a year and a half of him being in your rotation by trading them for Eric Fetty this year.
I think you need to understand what you're getting, though, in Eric Fetty. Although it looks great now, if it is like a Miles Michaelis type of move, you have no idea what it's going to look like next year. Because this was not the same pitcher before he went to pitch over in Korea.
And he's also a different arsenal, though. I think this is really important to keep in mind, is he is not pitching the same way that he did before he left. If he was the same arsenal now that he was then I would be talking differently. But he's throwing differently.
I understand that, and I agree with you there. But it's half of a season of it, and when teams catch up to what Eric Fetty's doing, what does that look like?
Yeah,
that's what I'd be concerned with. But I mean, look, you got to swing. You got to swing for something. And if that's the best option, that's going to cost you the least amount of capital, then I say you got to do it.
I think best case scenario from the Cardinals' perspective of appeasing the fan base is you end up swinging the next Jordan Montgomery trade. A guy that you get that has another year of control that can come in. That's what I'm saying, is I think he could be. But I think just like the Montgomery trade, I think the best case scenario from if you're the Cardinals and selling it to the fan base is, look, we just pulled off what we think is the next Montgomery trade. And at the time, the Montgomery trade was, why did we just trade for Jordan Montgomery? We just gave up our starting center fielder to Harrison Bader for Jordan Montgomery. And then look at what happened last year at the deadline where it was, we made a mistake of giving Michaels a contract and we should have given that to Montgomery.
Yeah, because the Cardinals manage their money poorly, and that's going to be the problem.
If I told you right now that over the next year and a half, Eric Fetty is for you from the right side what Jordan Montgomery was for you from the left side, we all agree that would be a massive success.
Absolutely.
And you'd trade multiple young starters to be able to get that?
Absolutely.
I think that's probably what he is somewhere in that range. I don't think Jordan Montgomery, the league, clearly based on this offseason, I don't think they view him as more than a number 3. I think Jordan Montgomery was selling himself as a 1 or a 2. The league said, no, you're a 3 or 4.
His agent was also selling him that way, too.
He ended up not getting signed until very late in the process and had to settle for a 1-year deal accordingly. I think that's where Eric Fetty is. Eric Fetty is somewhere in that, 2, 3, 4 range, depending on how good your rotation is. He's a mid-rotation guy. And if you add that to a team that has a number 1, has a couple other mid-rotation guys with Michaelis and Kyle Gibson, it's not sexy, but it gives you a chance. That'll give you a chance once you get to the postseason if this bullpen continues to be good. Coming up next, speaking of giving yourself a chance, Blues might need to upgrade on the wing. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Get pumped, BK, because Game 7 is tonight. It's going to be on every television in the Ferrario household, and I'm going to have my Circa Sports Illinois app open because I've got the parlay for you. It's the winning parlay, BK. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Under 5.5 goals. I told you earlier about how the over has not hit in 20 years. I'm saying the Florida Panthers win it straight up money line pick and take Barkov over 0.5 point. You put $10 on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, BK. That right there is only bringing you in $35. You do it on the Circa Sports Illinois app, it's bringing you $55. That's why we exclusively use Circa Sports Illinois.
And the reason why is because they've got better odds over there. If you want to bet on Florida tonight, the place to do so is with the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois. It's even money. Even money. You bet $100, you win $100 over on Circa. If you do that exact same thing over on FanDuel, it's -110. So you have to bet $110 to win $100. You're getting better odds with Circa. That is always the case. They recommend check out elsewhere. Check FanDuel. Check DraftKings. You'll come back to Circa because they're giving you the best odds. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234. All right, so we know the St. Louis Blues need to upgrade. They got to get better defensively. They got to get better up the middle with centers, preferably a number 2 center. Maybe that's Dalibor Dvorsky. But what we don't talk a lot about, Alex, is the wing. Because they do have some legitimate options on the wing, both for the now and for the future. Jordan Kyrou, Pavel Buchnevich, we'll see what happens with his contract. Brandon Saad already here, legit top 6 type of a winger, top 9 at a minimum, really solid veteran guy. Jake Neighbors emerged as one of those players this year. We'll see where Dvorsky ends up long term. And you've got Snuggerud still on the way. So you look at that and you're like, not a huge need for the Blues right now. And yet, earlier today, Alex, as I was reading on The Athletic, they put together their list of the teams with the best and worst wingers in the NHL. The Blues came in at number 22, which is probably not where you want to be in a list like this. They talked about how right now their nerdy numbers have Jake Neighbors as a third-line winger, although they did say there's room for growth there, and they think as a young player, he could be a legit top 6 winger for them. There were questions, as I said, about Pavel Buchnevich's future, and then Jordan Kyrou they really like. Alex, do you think that winger is a bigger need for the Blues than what we've made it out to be?
It depends on what year you're talking about. For this upcoming year, yes, because right now, I disagree with their piece, but I guess it makes sense. Jake Neighbors to me is a top 6 winger because he's already an almost 30-goal scorer. I understand you got to see what it looks like because that was his rookie year, but still, I would consider him top 6. And anytime you have 3 30 or more goal scorers on your wings, I think you're in a good position. That's Kyrou, Buch, and Jake Neighbors. Who knows with Pavel Buchnevich? Beyond that, it's very murky, but with Bolduc and with Snuggerud, if you're asking me for next season, this coming season, then yeah, you need to upgrade because you're weak beyond that. You don't have depth of scoring, and frankly, you don't have a 40 or more goal scorer. But I do think you strongly improve in that area with Jimmy Snuggerud, with the potential of what Zach Bolduc looks like. You're still missing that one piece. You're missing that one game-breaking piece to be in the wing that I believe would put you in like the top half of the league. That moves you up a few spots. Like I look at some of the teams that they put in there. Of course, you've got the Minnesota Wild who have elite on a couple of different angles. You've got
number 1.
You've got the Edmonton Oilers. When you have elite wingers, that makes sense. But let's just say you went out there and you traded Pavel Buchnevich for Martin Necas, or you went out there and signed Jake DeBrusk. I do think that puts you in a higher position because you have a veteran presence that knows the track record. Right now, the hard part for judging the wings, you've got Kyrou, who toes 40 lines. You don't know about Neighbors. You don't know about Snuggerud. You don't know about Bolduc and what position Dvorsky's really going to play. Those 5 guys could all be 40-goal scorers. Highly unlikely, but they could be.
I'd be surprised.
If you get 3 of them out of it, you're looking good. But I do believe you have
3 40-goal scorers?
3 of them. Yeah, I think you can have 3 of those guys be 40-goal scorers.
I will set the over-under at 1, and I would take the under.
I mean, Kyrou was 3 away. I think Jake Neighbors could be there for the style that he plays. He plays like Zach Hyman does.
If you think you can have multiple 40-goal scorers out of that group, then they don't have a need.
I mean, from everything we're being told about Jimmy Snuggerud, he's got the potential.
I mean, how many 40-goal scorers were there in the NHL in all this entire season?
Not that many.
I don't know, but I like we're getting 3.
I just think that's.
I need people to listen to what I'm saying, though. I'm not saying like next year and 2 years are going to be 40-goal scorers. I'm saying in their career, you can have potentially 3 40-goal scorers on this roster. I do think a couple of those guys have that. I mean, Kyrou is already essentially 1. He just needs to get 3 more goals in a season. So. For the long term, I don't know if wing is that much of a weakness for you. Long term, your weakness is center.
There were 17 40-goal scorers in the NHL this year. I don't think any. I would be shocked if any of those players not named Jordan Kyrou becomes a 40-goal scorer in the NHL.
I after watching what Zach Hyman did this year, and I understand he did it with McDavid, but after watching him put up 70 goals in the regular season and the playoffs, and then Jake Neighbors doing 27 in his rookie year. He plays the position that can be a 35 to 40 goal scorer.
I think it's more likely Jake Neighbors never reaches more goals than what he had this season in his entire NHL career than it is that he ends up getting into 40.
I disagree with you there. I disagree with you. He plays, especially if you're putting him with Robert Thomas, who's a 100-point player. You get to 100 points by having a 40-goal scorer and the finisher who stands on the front of the net.
I hope you're right. Like, I would love nothing more than for them to have multiple guys that have that kind of potential.
But here's the thing. You're projecting with it, though, because all of these guys are rookies.
Projection.
But you're projecting. I don't know what Snuggerud looks like because I haven't seen him at the NHL. I'm going off of what scouts tell us in terms of he has an elite shot at the NHL level.
I feel like there's been some waffling on that in terms of, like, where does he fit long term? I have not seen many people say Jimmy Snuggerud is a top line elite level winger. I've seen a lot of people say he's probably somewhere in your middle six, top six, middle six type of a forward. And if that's the case, I'm thinking more like 25 goals. And that's a good player, man. Like I think sometimes he was a late first round pick. Sometimes we want everybody to become an elite player. Dude, if you just get a 25-goal score out of a late first-round pick, you're feeling pretty good. That's a win for that spot in the draft.
But we're told it's an elite shot. And to me, like Jason Robertson was drafted in the second round with an elite shot. And he got back-to-back 40-goal seasons.
It's the rarity, though, man. Like, how many other wingers had an elite shot that were drafted in the second round and then went on to have 10 goals?
I mean, you think Kyra can be there. You're right. That's more of the norm of having guys that don't get there. But here's why Jason Robertson got there, because he had a 100-point player in your centerman. And this is why long-term projecting, I'm not talking about these guys getting to 40 goals within the next 2 years. Your weakness is center. Your weakness is the depth at center, because you have one guy who's a 100-point player, and then you're utilizing Braden Shen, who might be a 50-point performer, and Kevin Hayes. If Dvorsky gets to be a 100-point player as a centerman, which I highly doubt, but if he's the centerman for you, then you upgrade. But your weakness is the center position right now, because I think the best center brings the best out of your wingers.
So on the wing, potentially going to have David Perron back here in St. Louis. What?
Hell yes.
This is what Jeremy Rutherford wrote earlier today. He was asked by The Athletic to give just a bold prediction. Every NHL writer was asked, hey, can you give us a bold prediction for your team? And JR wrote the following. Before you say it'll never happen, let's highlight a few things. One, David Perron is a free agent. And while he could re-sign in Detroit, we are inching closer to him hitting the open market. Two, the Blues are in a retool, but they want to stay competitive, and Perron could be a short-term, reasonably priced player that could help them. And number three, Alex Steen, David Perron's former teammate and the future general manager of the Blues, now has a say in the front office. Yes, there were a lot of hard feelings when Perron left the last time, but he would never turn his back on St. Louis, end quote. Now, this is not JR saying this is going to happen. This is JR saying, hey, if I was to make a bold prediction for the Blues, this is something that would be a really good storyline, and I'll go ahead and throw this out there. Alex, the longer we go without David Perron re-signing in Detroit, the more I wonder, hey, is he not going to be back in Detroit? Kind of feels similar to what happened here in St. Louis, where it was like, oh, they'll get it done. They'll get it done. They didn't get it done. Yeah. And then suddenly he's going elsewhere. Well, do you think this is a real option?
I do. I mean, take a look at the trends around the NHL. Like, there are teams basically saying, like, we're not going to wait for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final to finish. We're going to make our offseason checklist done now. Perron's a guy that if he was going to be in Detroit, I think he would have signed by now, because Steve Yzerman's got the Yzer plan that if you're going to be here, we're going to sign you and put you down on pen and paper, and it hasn't gotten done yet. I don't know if it's realistic that the Blues are the team that he goes to because of how it ended. Now, you do have a different GM that's going to be talking with him, because I know Armstrong's doing the dealings day-to-day now, but Steen's in those conversations, and if Steen says, I want Perron here, then you got a different conversation. I personally believe that Perron makes more sense, and I think he's going to be signing in a different place, either Vegas or Toronto. But if he's available, I would do it, because as I just mentioned, you've got a lot of younger wingers that are going to be taking bigger roles over the next couple of years. And if there's one guy that I want playing with them and in them, in around the locker room, it's Perron, because he knows what it takes to play at the NHL level. He knows what it looks like for Blues hockey. That would probably be one of those get-it-done checklists, because this year he's a top six winger for you. Next year, 2 years, depending on what the length of his contract and how he wants to be, playing your third line with other younger players.
You know who I want him talking to? Zach Bolduc.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I want him to be around Zach Bolduc at all times. Both French-speaking Canadian players, both of them very skilled. I think Bolduc broke in and had a little bit more of an advanced game than I was expecting him to early on.
Honestly, the way he talked to us at the end of the season after those exit interviews, he talked about how he wanted to get more physical. Like it sounds like he wants to be David Perron.
Yeah.
Which is why I'd put David Perron around him.
I would love to have those guys next to one another. And I saw this weekend a quote from Alec Burleson talking about how, hey, when you hear something from coaches, it's one thing. When you hear it from your peer and a guy that has had success at this level, kind of doing it the way that he had, he said, when Matt Carpenter told me, hey, I need to be seeking this kind of a pitch and I can do damage with this pitch, it resonated with Burleson in a different kind of way. The same thing could absolutely be true for a guy like Zach Bolduc if you hear it from David Perron as opposed to hearing it from a coach.
Dvorsky's the other one that I want Perron to be around, because I don't think they're going to use him as a centerman right away. He'll be a winger. I want Perron to get him up at the NHL level to be with that. Like, that's the best type of winger to have around them.
Right the wrong. Bring him back.
And it's not going to cost you much. I mean, probably $3 million a year, maybe less.
Probably a one-year deal. would be my
Maybe.
guess.
I mean, you might
Maybe
be able to get might be able to get a couple-year deal out of it and just have him end his career in St. Louis.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up next, the Cardinals have some warning signs on both JoJo Romero and Andrew Kittredge. Are they listening to them? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion. The place to do so is Victory Men's Health. Man, did you wake up today and think to yourself, man, my sleep wasn't as good. I don't feel as rested as I once did. You get to your workout and you're not getting the same results as you once did. Maybe you're just struggling with some of your weight loss goals and you feel like you could get more out of it. The place to go is Victory Men's Health. They can help you out with all of that. They're doing that for me as well. I went in a couple of weeks ago now, got my blood work done. They get all the results, and now this week I've got my consult that I'm going to go in there, and they're going to be able to read off all of my numbers, my micronutrient levels, my testosterone levels, and they'll put together a personalized plan for you depending on what your goals are. They can do that for you as well. It's Victory Men's Health. Check them out. 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and they've got all of their information available right now at Victory Men's Health. You can go over there, request a call back. You put in your name, email, phone number, tell them a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish. Victory Men's Health can help you unlock your inner champion today at victorymenshealth.com.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals swept the Giants with their 5-3 victory yesterday, and they start a 3-game set at home against the Atlanta Braves tonight. 6:45 will be first pitch as Lance Lynn will get the start for St. Louis. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, and we'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
It's not red alarm bells, but there are some warning signs that are starting to show up here for both JoJo Romero and Andrew Kittredge. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, when you look at the way that they've been utilizing JoJo Romero lately, it's a lot different than what it looked like early in the season. Over his last 4 appearances, he has not gone more than 2/3 of an inning. He has not finished a full inning since June 11th. We're talking about 2 weeks now since he last finished an entire inning. In those 4 appearances, he's gone 1 2/3 innings. He has allowed 3 hits, 3 walks, has 1 strikeout, and has allowed 4 earned runs. Opposing hitters are batting .375 with an OPS of 1,300 against him. In this stretch, again, it's only 4 appearances, but it's 4 appearances over the course of 2 weeks. His usage has been strange. You look at that same 2-week stretch, Andrew Kittredge has appeared 7 times. Opposing hitters are batting .321 against him with an OPS of 1,100. He's allowed 9 hits, 4 earned runs, and has 2 walks in that stretch of games. Alex, these are the 2 guys that you're going to bridge that gap between your starter and your number 1 reliever and Ryan Helsley most nights. And there are some warning signs here that they are slipping in terms of their effectiveness. What's your level of concern right now with JoJo and Kittredge?
Pretty high. I think more so with JoJo than Kittredge. Like Kittredge, it seems to just be a blow up here or there, but more than anything, Kittredge finds ways to get through the innings. The concern is with JoJo to where you're not being able to complete innings, and when you come in, there is always that threat of this thing going sideways very quick. It honestly feels a little like what Giovanni Gallegos was last year, to where when he stepped on the mound, you're like, oh man, this is going to go south very quickly. I don't know if it's the yips with him or if it's just a matter of how much they've used him, and then it's just trying to get back to some consistent stuff. Kittredge, although he's had those blow-ups, it feels like Kittredge, it's one batter that takes him the opposite direction, and you're like, oh, okay, makes sense. That was a decent pitch. Romero is, you can't find the strike zone. Guys are hitting you hard, and you're not even able to get 2 outs. He's the one I'm most concerned for.
Yeah, I'm getting fairly worried with JoJo, just because I don't think you have another left-hander like him in your bullpen. And Liberatore's been good, don't get me wrong, when he's in his relief role, but he doesn't have as good a stuff as JoJo Romero. When JoJo's on, that is some of the best stuff out of the bullpen. I'd argue it's the second best stuff out of the pen as a group. And something just has been off with him of late. And the usage has been weird, so I'm a little more concerned with him. I'm also concerned for Kittredge because he's become very splitty. You know, he's very good against right-handers, but left-handers are starting to hit him very well, to where now you have to operate with him with a lane. You know, JoJo needs his lane with lefties. Kittredge needs his lanes with righties. The reason I feel better, though, with this bullpen as a whole is it's not like in years past, where if 2 of your 3 best arms or 2 of your 3 late inning arms really struggled, you didn't have anybody to pick up the slack till they could figure it out. The nice part is with this bullpen now, the Cardinals have it so deep that you've got Ryan Fernandez, Matthew Liberatore that you can turn to, John King, who's been very good from the left side as well. All these guys can help support this load to where I think you're just seeing one of those weird stretches for these guys to where, like, my concern meter for JoJo is probably more of a 7. For Andrew Kittredge, it's probably like at a 5, I would say.
Yeah, and at least for JoJo, I mean, BK or T-Bone mentioned it. John King has been somebody that, like, I trust when he steps onto the mound. And then, of course, you got Matthew Liberatore as well. So, like, you have those options. For righty, it just seems like you've got Ryan Fernandez, and that's about it.
Some of this might be because JoJo has become almost exclusively a 2-pitch pitcher. His changeup is not working for him this season. And I don't know if opposing hitters are just finding a way to eliminate, depending on what they're better against, either the sinker or the slider. But that is something that he's got to get figured out. Last year, the changeup was a pretty good pitch for him. And this year, it's not effective at all. And it's something that he really uses against right-handed hitters. And so that's been something where, hey, last year you can go to this against righties and it prevents you from having those significant splits. This year he did go to it early on. It got rocked to the level of a 400 batting average against and an 840 OPS or 840 slugging percentage against. If you don't have that as a weapon, well, now I can't use you in those lanes against right-handed hitters. And this may explain why the other day, can't remember which game it was, but we asked. Yeah, it was a weird spot where they wouldn't go to him because he didn't have significant splits previously against right-handed hitters. And I wonder if they're seeing this data. I'm sure they are. They're saying, hey, JoJo probably not a good option right now against right-handed hitters. Let's see if he can refine the shape, refine the confidence in his changeup before we decide to go back to him in those spots. Because he almost exclusively throws that pitch against right-handed hitters. Last year he threw it 153 times, 149 of those were against righties. And this year he's ditched it in most of his recent outings, and he's just going with the slider and the sinker. Both are pretty good pitches, especially that slider. It's been really effective this season. But if you can't get the righties out with the changeup, if you don't have that other offering against right-handed hitters, suddenly they're saying, okay, well, I'm not going against that slider. I'm just going to sit on your sinker, and then when I see it, boom, I'm crushing it. And that's what's been happening a decent amount lately. So my confidence level much higher with Kittredge. I think Kittredge might just be going through, holy bleep, I didn't pitch hardly at all last year. I pitched a lot this season, and I get it. I don't blame them for doing so, but he has more appearances this year than he had the last 2 years combined. And I wonder if he's just hitting that wall right now where he will eventually break through. You just need to get him to the All-Star break, get him a little bit of rest, and then he'll be fine the second half of the season. I'm much less worried about him. I don't think there's as many causes for concern.
I think for relievers, it looks like appearances, he's 14th most in Major League Baseball. And JoJo Romero, by the way, I think he's sitting at like 21st or 22nd in appearances. So I'm with you. Kittredge feels an awful lot like you've used him a ton, and it's just a matter of like the guy is just fatigued by the time he steps onto the mound. Romero's feels more like the yips with certain pitches that he was throwing earlier in the season that he was getting guys out with.
Nobody in baseball has a higher chase rate than Andrew Kittredge on the season. It's crazy. He's been so good for the Cardinals, man.
And I think he's one of those guys that probably needs to be coming in clean innings. You know, they've been using him a lot to come in. And I looked this up before the show because I was curious, because yesterday those runs don't count against him. You know, those are JoJo's runs that end up scoring, those two when he's out there. 7 of 14 inherited runners are scored on him. So 50% of the time when he takes over with runners on base, they're scoring. And look, that's a hard role. It's hard to be the fireman out of the bullpen. Somebody's got to take that role. They clearly feel like Kittredge can be that guy. I would prefer that they start going with him just with clean innings, finding his lane. But I can understand that that's a little bit harder as well to try and find that lane for Andrew Kittredge in that situation.
I think I would try going to Fernandez.
Yeah.
Hey, Fernandez, come in, get the last out here, and then you get the full clean inning on your own as well. And he's shown an ability to be able to go multiple innings. He's got a little bit more in terms of the workload that's there for him. I think that's probably the way that I would start utilizing Ryan Fernandez. Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind and compare where the Braves are at compared to the Cardinals here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Big series starting tonight, Cardinals versus the Atlanta Braves. I just want to do a quick little experiment with you guys. If you had to take one player or the other based on production so far this season, who are you going with? Let's start with the top of the lineup. Based on, you guys know, Braves lineup is very static. They don't really switch things up a whole lot. Something that Cardinals fans were saying, that's the model. Well, it hasn't worked out so well for the Braves
leading
so far
off.
this
I'll
year.
take him.
Batting leadoff this year for the Braves, recently at least, has been Jared Kelenic, who's having a little bit of a career renaissance so far. He's been pretty solid for them. Would you take Kelenic or Wynn as your leadoff hitter, guys?
I'd take Wynn.
I'd take Wynn.
Wynn is 20% above league average. Kelenic 111, so 11% above league average. Wynn wins. All right, next thing up, number 2 hole hitters so far this year. Albies versus Burleson. Who do you guys think has been more productive offensively this year?
This is a BK game, so I'll say Burleson.
Yeah, I'll go Burley as well.
Burleson. Albies is at 6% above league average. Burleson 25% above league average. Dang. Ozuna versus Contreras. I'm putting Contreras in the 3 hole.
I'm guessing Ozuna because I know he's playing like an MVP.
Ozuna, but not by much. Ozuna's at 174 OPS plus. Contreras 169.
Long term, I'd still take Contreras over Ozuna.
Olsen versus Goldie.
I would take Olsen.
Olsen has indeed been better so far this year.
That's not that hard to figure out.
Riley versus Gorman.
I would think Riley.
Riley, but not by much.
And I would still take Riley long term.
Gorman's at 96 so far.
I'll take Riley.
Duvall or Arenado?
Oh, my guy, Duvall.
Duvall.
He's been terrible.
Really?
Absolutely awful. He's at a 55, Arenado 98.
He signed late, which
Murphy, who everybody wanted here in St. Louis, by the way, has been terrible since like the second month of last year versus Brendan Donovan.
I'll take Donovan.
Donnie it is. Out of the top 7 in those lineups, the Cardinals have 4 that are better than who are in those same spots for the Braves. And if you wanted to go through the 9 hole, Cardinals are basically equal 8-9 as well. It's just a toss-up between the two. The Braves lineup has not been what we expected them to be so far this season. However, they have really good pitching, and you're going to see 2 of their best guys in this series, not tonight, but starting tomorrow and then after that as well. Reynaldo Lopez and Chris Sale have been awesome. Everything that the Braves could have asked for and then some. This is going to be a really good test for the Cardinals offense. They saw a couple of good pitchers over the weekend, see another couple over the next 2 days. Tonight is the game you got to get. Because tonight's the game where their starter is gettable.
Who's on the mound for the Cardinals?
Doesn't matter.
I was going to say, our starter's kind of gettable,
I was going to say, ours is real gettable.
Did you hear that lineup that I just Cardinals got it. Cardinals got it. A 7-5 win tonight because they don't win.
Braves fans got to be feeling the same way with Lance Lynn on the mound. Be like, this is a gettable one for us tonight,
guys.
Well,
got Palante on Wednesday, so
they're probably thinking that this one's more gettable.
I think it's sweep.
Schwellenbach is on the mound tonight. He's got a 5 ERA on the season. He has been better lately, a righty. Be interested to see if we get news coming up here pretty soon on Wilson Contreras and the expected news.
If Schwellenbach was a lefty, Cardinals no-hitter against him.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. You guys think they get it tonight?
I'll say they win. They're building good momentum, good vibes.
We'll talk about that tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next from 2 to 6 right here on 101 ESPN.